All right, it is 6:05 on March 19th. My name is Bob Tebow, I'm the Superintendent of Windham Central, and I will call the meeting to order. I am calling the meeting to order because the Windham School District Board has just had a new election and therefore must reorganize. And so first on the agenda will be to have nominations for a chair.
I would like to say that I have interest in continuing to be chair, so I'm not sure what folks' thoughts are on that.
So, I mean, I have interest in chair, but less so like the title, right? Like one thing that's been, I think, particularly hard has been agendas. And I think where our school, I mean, our district, right, is going is more financially, agendas where we're looking at fixed costs, we're looking to figure out fee situations with the building use, right, XYZ. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in because I think a part of this is not just, right, the officers, but the responsibilities of the officers. And I'm interested in perhaps like running the agendas first and then having you guys input in it. Does that sound like something we could do?
Then that would be something prior to a meeting, if there were information, say, Bob would need to add, then you could add it at that point, right?
Yeah, so typically what I do with all the other chairs, minus maybe Stratton, is meet on a regular basis prior to the board meetings to actually plan the agenda out together, to take the stuff that Lori or Greg or whatever other organization is flowing through, plus the stuff that the board had from the last meeting, and to build an agenda that way. So I'm willing to work with whatever chair you guys represent. I have not heard a nomination for chair. I've heard two people interested in the chair, but I have not heard a nomination for chair, so I'm still waiting for that.
So if that's simpatico with you, like I nominate you if that's
yes,
if that makes sense.
That would totally make sense, and I would be completely on board with him making the agenda, but still retaining the chair.
Oh, I think that works fantastic. So
you second
the nomination.
The nomination of Abby Pelton as board chair.
Yes.
So I have a first and I have a second.
Yeah.
And so is there any discussion? Sounds like you've had some discussion. Do we have any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, we will ask all in favor to elect Abby as chair of the Windham School District. So please signify by saying aye.
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 It appears to be unanimous. We declare Abby the new chair of the Windham School District, or the repeated chair of the school district. And I will now turn the meeting over to you. And I will note, I did provide a reorganization checklist.
Yep.
And I have a form that I have to fill out to turn in both for us and for VSBA. We don't have any new members. So that is a little bit easier, but there are usually some process to follow there. So I am going to write down Abby Pelton as chair.
And then, Jen, you didn't get one?
No, he took mine, or
Yeah, I think there was just a shuffling.
Okay.
And then,
It's all good.
wherever the book went,
Did you have the book? You have the book?
I did not. We can share.
Okay, I'm sorry. I took a pile of stuff and buried it under my other book.
Stealing piles.
So with the reorg, so you're just gonna do just the chair and then I will do vice chair and clerk, or you do the whole?
Yep, now that you're
Okay.
the chair, you take on the rest of it as far as the election of those other officers and through the rest of the
Okay.
check. I basically put the checklist items on the agenda, so we just follow the agenda through. But obviously, we want to organize first before we get into anything different, so.
Okay, so I would make a motion, for Daniel to be vice chair. Can I get a second?
Do you want vice chair?
I don't want clerk.
Well, I think, that is something that
But I'm happy to work.
I do have
with
information
together.
about, so clerk typically does minutes, right? I actually have found someone that can do the minutes.
As I said, every other board hires someone to do minutes.
Not even hire a
AI.
situation, a volunteer situation. So it's not going to impact our budget. And yeah, they'll be able to do the minutes for us.
That would be lovely.
So
Then I second that motion. And I will support however necessary.
Which will be, including everything, right? When Daniel's creating the agenda and helping us out with stuff with that, because that's important. You're a very valuable brain to have here, Rory, so.
the glue.
All right, so, here, we've had a second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I.
I,
All right, and, I motion for Rory to be the clerk. As,
second.
all right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
I.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then do we need to motion for that individual to take over doing the minutes?
Yeah,
Would
I
that
would-
be something we could do now, possibly?
Sure. Andy Farrow.
Do you want to move for,
Oh, I move for Andy Farrow to do the minutes
I second?
and subsequent meetings.
Any discussion?
I don't know who that is.
Recording in
but
progress.
Oh dear.
You got it.
I don't think I know Annie, but I trust,
Yeah.
I
she's-
trust your
Andy,
judgment.
plays it Andy.
Andy,
Annie,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Farrell,
without an E.
A and an I.
Yeah, Farrow.
Farrell, okay.
Farrow.
O-W, okay.
Yeah.
It would be good if you have contact information. We can do it later, just give me an email first so I can connect with her to make sure her and Sue are connected, so we can get minutes flowing, that whole thing, the website and all that stuff.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, so we have those established. Elect the WCSU representative and WCSU policy committee. So there's two representatives for the WCSU representative, like two people would do that and one person would be part of the policy committee. Is that correct, Bob?
That is correct.
Okay, so,
Typically, the chair is one of the two for the SU body.
but I'm also okay with if you guys have interest in those as well. So I mean, I guess if you have an interest, we could move on that.
So, just real quick, for policy, that was you previously, correct? Okay, because, I have no problem,
It can be both. One person could do the policy and be on the SU board as well,
I see.
as Abby was last time. Or it could be three different people in those three different seats.
Okay.
Whatever you prefer.
So do we just nominate?
Although you really.
Yeah, we'd have to
you should have someone-
nominate-
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You should have someone who's doing SU policy committee who is not on the SU board. So I take that back. It can't be three different people. The policy committee member has to be on the SU board.
Right, that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Okay.
And nominate Rory.
For,
Both.
Do you want that?
what?
Yeah,
Do you want that?
I mean, of course, yeah. You have to.
As far as, I mean, what we have to value is everyone's time, that does take extra time, and that is something we've,
I worry about the time commitment for the policy committee. I've already been to a number of the WCSU meetings, and I'm fine with that role. I just don't know what the policy committee commitment would be.
so since this is going to be leading into, well, the policy piece, be non-operational, how does that,
So this is policy for the WCSU board.
yep. So
What board
not
would
your
they
board.
will?
Because your board's only three, you wouldn't have a separate committee to do your own policies. You would do that as a group. But this is to be on a member of the SU policy committee who oversees their policies, of which you guys are under the umbrella, but it's a different board. And so they have their own sets of policies. They meet, I would say, maybe quarterly. They're currently chaired by Allison Young, who's the Stratton chair.
Okay.
That's the chair of the policy committee.
Okay,
It's a fun group.
I accept your nomination.
So you're being nominated,
Okay,
just to
so-
be clear, for both an SU seat and the policy seat is what I'm hearing, just to.
for Rory.
Okay.
Can I get a second, or do we do the second?
Nominated.
You nominate, I second?
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of Rory having the WCSU and policy seat? Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then,
We still have one representative. Do we have to, if it's usually the board chair, do we need to still have?
It's a great question. I was just thinking that, the SU has its own bylaws. And as you guys were talking about that, I was wondering whether the board chair has to be on it. That I don't know. Why don't we do this? If the chair doesn't want to be on it and you want to identify someone else, why don't we do that? And then if it turns out that doesn't meet their bylaws,
Yeah.
I'll let you know and you guys can change it later.
Does that sound, and so, and this would also be collaborative with, the gentleman that just got the spot at town meeting. Oh my gosh, I'm spacing his name right now.
Oh.
Stapleton.
Stapleton, yes, thank you. So that would be, individuals would also be probably communicating with him as far as stuff that's going on.
Well, so he's a member of the West River Board, which separately has members elected to serve on the SU board. And they'll be reorganizing after, I think, the early April meeting. So they will have different, so they could both be on the SU board together, but it would depend on who West River elects
Okay.
from within. And they have more numbers, so they have more representation.
So Daniel, do you have would you like to be the WCSU representative with Rory? And then if there's an issue and they say it's the chair, then we'll deal with it then, but, or do you have no desire to do that, of which case that's totally fine too, and I can.
What is the responsibility for that?
So
Each
the
have
S,
more meetings.
yeah, so the SU board is the board that actually hires me. And they adopt and pass the SU budget, which includes the superintendent's budget, the MTSS special education budget, of which those assessments gets passed on to the individual districts. So when you see the SU assessment in your budget, the SU board members are the ones that approve that.
I see.
So you'd look at a different level of budgeting at the SU level as well.
Yeah.
Some of the shared services that get dispensed out, you would have, oversight over that as an SU board member.
What's the cadence of these meetings?
I mean, it's
Monthly, maybe,
every
but
other
it's-
month, maybe.
Okay.
It's not as
Yeah, it's not as frequent.
robust as these meetings have
It's not like
been.
December where we had 5
Correct.
meetings.
No, they
No,
don't
it's
have
not
nearly
like
as
that.
many, and they don't
Okay.
last nearly as long. The one thing I will say is that what was I gonna say about the SU? Shoot, I lost it. I'm sorry. It'll come back
Happens
to me.
more often than not, Bob. I'm right there with
It'll
you.
come back to me.
That's why the next agenda point is good.
Yeah, I don't even know what that
Talk
is,
about
but-
that.
Yeah, I'll come back to it now, but it's not that right. Oh, I know what it was. The SU board also has an SU executive committee, which is made up of the board chairs and the officers of the SU board. And that group meets more regularly, probably every 2 weeks, just to do updates of what's happening in districts, just to kind of keep people in the loop and network that way. And to deal with problems as they come up for the larger group. So for example, when I had you guys probably got the alert about, well, you did for sure, you got the alert about the half day for Eclipse, on the Eclipse Day.
Yeah. That's dead. I was going to respond, but
I didn't go to all the boards fully to get permission to do that. I went to the executive committee of the supervisor union board, which has reps from each of the boards. And then that was like, they were like, yeah, sounds cool.
I thought that was a good move.
So that's the kind of root things that they would do. They would help set the agendas for the SU full board meetings, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
And that again is typically the chairs of the boards who are usually on the SU board and the officers of the SU board.
Okay.
So, but again, I can find out if it's okay to have a different person, the vice chair in this case, serve in that capacity. But you have to be on the SU board to serve on the executive committee. So
I'd have to do what the executive committee 2 week. Is that what
well,
the
I mean,
suggestion is?
one of your district's reps would basically act as chair in this case, I would imagine, unless we find out we can't, to have someone appointed to that group.
So we actually got an email, this probably could go in correspondence, but we got an email regarding the executive committee meeting coming up. And it's usually the chair, but if it's not, then the vice chair or another board member, as long as the
Okay.
district is represented.
Can you be a part of the executive committee?
Well,
Just,
it sounds like as long as somebody's there, do we need to be a formal
it doesn't
member
need
of the
to,
committee?
I mean, it'd be
We're only
good if it's the
three.
same person, just so as far as like being in the loop of what's happening. But
Right.
I mean, I don't, again, I have to read the bylaws. I
Yeah.
honestly
Sure.
don't know.
Yeah,
It's all new.
I think it's a lot harder for us because we're only three.
Yeah.
So you have these
Yeah.
larger boards where they can divide
Yeah,
and
well,
conquer a little
Marlboro,
bit easier. than-
Marlboro has gone down to 3 as well this year from 5, but their board chair is retired, and so he's got the time to do that, so it's a different animal as well. So, but we also, those are in the mornings, if that changes things. We usually do those, we started doing it at 8, we moved it to 9, and moved it back to 8.
The executive committee or?
The executive committee
Okay.
ones, twice a month in the mornings, just because, and again, it's like a quick thing.
If we can, I don't know, if we can like split it or something.
All right, let me look into that. At this point, though,
Yeah. I mean, that would be more.
Has he been voted
tolerable
on
than
the SU board?
One of us having, that's a lot.
I didn't write down
Yeah.
yet.
So
Is that still?
that
motion
was, that's still that motion
still
still
out there,
stands,
okay.
it's still out there, because we wanted to make sure, I mean, I don't want anyone uncomfortable or doing something that they don't wanna do, but if it is something that you wanna do, then by golly, do it, so, if you are interested and you want it,
Sure.
then, okay, so a motion for Daniel to have the WCSU representative, need a second?
I second your motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All
So I'll
right,
just work with you as far as the executive committee goes. I'll just talk to the two of you unless I find out otherwise that it can't be, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Once I look at the bylaws.
yeah,
So,
Cool.
we can work together, so we'll figure it out. Regular board meeting schedule. So I'm assuming that is the date and, day of the month that we
Yep.
are looking to meet. So what typically and historically, we've had it as the third Tuesday, correct?
and so,
So are there ideas about how that would look for?
Looking at my calendar.
Yeah, I mean, I think prior to other board members, I think like previous board members, wasn't it like on Mondays and a little earlier? Because I think that's what I would like to do is recommend like Monday, say starting at 4, like something like that,
So
just ahead of the week. And
the Monday time slot, the only challenges that I see within like just community scheduling is, the select board meets on Mondays and they meet twice a month. I think the planning commission also meets on Mondays, so that would leave a Monday, and then it's
and
how
I
much?
have 2 River Valleys meets on 2 different Mondays, and West River meets on one other Monday. So I basically have 1 Monday free at this point.
Which Monday is that?
Well, that's what I was trying to pull up my
Because I
calendar to
have
see.
meetings on the 4th Monday of the month, but it's at 7:30.
okay,
So
So
if it was
hopefully-
earlier, then in theory that would be fine.
I would hope we'd
Because
be
they're
done by
usually-
7:30.
Yeah, yeah.
I think River Valleys might be first and third, and West River the second.
What is the planning commission? What,
I think it's the second and the, what would that be, second and fourth?
oh, they meet twice a month as well?
Yeah, they meet every other Monday.
So then this.
And the third Monday is the planning commission.
So that leaves what, the first Monday? So I'm hearing?
I'm not on the first Monday.
Oh, okay.
And so Lori and Greg and those folks as well are on the Maple Level.
What
They
about,
could change theirs, but they haven't reorged yet, so.
yeah, but what about Thursday?
No, Thursday's not good.
Not at all.
It would have to be at like 4.
I would like to do, yeah, like ideally at 4.
I mean,
Yeah, just
that's
'cause
fine
of-
for me.
Yeah, I mean, just because of work, family, you
Yeah.
know, balance.
I
Yeah,
would prefer earlier as well.
Go ahead.
Oh, Bridget, we should probably
Bridget,
get some feedback on that.
go ahead, see your hands raised?
You. Just to give a little historical context, it was at 4, but a lot of families requested it be moved to 6 because a lot of us couldn't attend. So it used to be at 4 and there wasn't a lot of participation. So that's why it was moved to a later time.
Thank you.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
Crystal has her hand up.
Crystal? Go ahead.
I would say if you guys are non-operational, I think if you have it earlier, people aren't going to get terribly upset. Because I think they'll be able to watch the recordings.
What's the relevant? Is there going to be crosstalk there? Okay. What's the relevance of non-operational, Crystal?
Because their kids are in a different school, probably.
Oh, so they have to like, drive
Yeah,
down.
that's what I'm assuming.
No, I
Sorry,
appreciate
Crystal,
it.
if
I'm
that
just
doesn't jive.
checking in.
I don't think the parents will have like major things they're coming to you about.
Great.
Yeah.
No, that's helpful. Thank
I mean, that's kind of where my head's at. Of if we're non-operational, it's going to be a very different type of meeting typically.
The Stratton meetings are half an hour,
Yeah.
if they're that long.
Exactly.
And they're once a month.
Maybe we could move towards a lunchtime meeting one day.
Oh,
Just kidding.
that'd be awesome.
One day.
Yeah, I would just like to be able to tuck my child into
Yes.
bed and not
Have dinner.
be here till 7:30 or 8.
7:30.
Yeah, sometimes it
Like
it
9.
has been.
I was gonna say, that's early, isn't it?
Yeah, that's early
Yeah,
for.
exactly.
I'm not sure if that's Royce or Royce, Joyce or Russ.
Like a Hollywood couple.
Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to suggest maybe a compromise at 5 o'clock, because I know a number of people don't get home early enough to have a meeting at 4 if they have children and working. A compromise at 5 would make it a little bit later than what Dan wants, but a little bit earlier than what it currently is.
Yeah, that's good.
So, thank you, Russ.
So everybody's
Um,
the full spectrum of.
So Thursday,
Well, no, you can't do
Yeah, for
Thursday at all.
Thursday for me would have, if we
It
do
would
it
have to
Thursday, it
be
would
at
have to be a
4.
little bit earlier because I have to be somewhere at 7 o'clock, so I gotta leave by 6:45. So if we're running late, that won't work for me.
Man, I still think Thursday at 4 then would be.
Can we do a trial and see if it
You
works?
can make a change anytime.
And then
Then we can motion, say to
Yep.
if people are really unhappy with the time,
Sure.
if we give it like maybe 3 months or something and
Yeah.
see.
I
how
would say
it
that, and I don't know the rules on this exactly, maybe someone else will, but if you were gonna change it, you probably wanna warn a
Okay.
possible meeting time change in that agenda in advance. Just so people know that's gonna probably not just do it on a whim in a meeting.
Yeah.
That'd be the only thing. Otherwise, but you could change it anytime.
Okay.
so we're looking at Thursdays at 4. Which Thursday?
Oh, for me, it doesn't. I don't think it matters to me.
Yeah, I'm
Do you
open.
guys have any? How about you, Bob?
So I have Marlboro meetings on Thursdays, and those are monthly, and there's one this Thursday, which is the third Thursday?
Stomach, I'm
The
sorry.
first.
Yeah, it is the third, so I do have one.
I'm looking at the sausages
Okay,
thing.
so
going,
not the third Thursday.
Oh, well, I mean, if it's at 4,
Oh, if that's
I mean, I have to be in Marlboro at 6. It's a heck of a, this, from here to Marlboro is the furthest 2 points in the
yeah, that's
SU.
far.
Yeah,
Um,
and they're not great roads.
No, but maybe I could alternate Zoom for one of you guys each, and then do one from home and then kind of alternate, so that maybe would work for me.
I mean, would you
Uh,
prefer them to be on the same?
I mean, in some ways, get them
Yes, I
done in
know,
one
I
day
get
is
it.
maybe better. I don't anticipate if you are non-operational, if you're moving in that direction, that's what you're gonna be doing. They won't be long. I
Yeah.
mean, you have some stuff to take care of
Don't make
first.
promises.
Well, I'm just saying, there isn't,
Knock on wood.
Crystal's right, there isn't a lot to talk about.
Right.
Once you guys deal with what you're gonna do with the building, your busing.
Yeah, probably these next few.
There's some
meetings
things that
will
you'll have to
be a
nail
lot.
down, but once you do that, you're really improving financials and minutes and
Right.
some residency stuff, which I know we
Right.
can talk about that tonight too, but you'll get some stuff like that because people are paying tuition, like those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But those will be not major things. So for me, 4 o'clock on the, what did I say, third Thursday?
Third.
Could work, yeah.
Can you do the second Thursday?
I could do any of the Thursdays,
We have
yeah.
a question
Oh,
for
Kathy.
Kathy.
Just point of information, I know the Meeting House Committee, I believe, meets the third Thursday of every month at 5.
Okay. So second Thursday?
If you're done before, but I just am saying that so that you know.
No, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second?
So,
I mean,
Not second the motion, but second.
it works for
Oh,
me.
second Thursday is what you're saying?
Yeah, second
If that
Thursday.
works for
Yeah.
how I feel bad because you were hoping for.
Well, no, I mean, at 4 o'clock is like I still,
You could do
that's
this.
not an evening meeting for me. That's a
Yeah.
part of my workday still. So like, it's actually,
Pretty okay.
Yeah.
I can make
Okay,
it work, yeah.
great.
Cool.
So
That works
you're,
for me.
so you, is that a motion on the floor? Is that, should you do
Move
that?
to have our regular board meeting scheduled for the second Thursday at 4 PM. Can I get a second?
Second.
Daniel, second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, so just real quick. Okay, so Bob, you had mentioned warning a meeting change in the future. Do we need to do anything? Are we able to just motion to change it today for the next meeting?
Yeah, because this is a reorg, this is when you would normally do it.
Oh,
Yep.
okay, I see.
Yep.
That's okay.
And if it doesn't work and we need to change it, we
Then
would
have to
warn it
warn it.
ahead
Okay,
of time.
okay. Yep,
Is that what she
then that's my discussion.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passed. We will be meeting second Thursday, 4 PM. And that will continue to be Zoom and hybrid? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a bill that's being considered right
I
now
saw
that would
that.
force you to have hybrid.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can't
'cause
go
they're trying
one
to
or the
do-
other, they're forcing the hybrid. So, so just to clarify, the second Thursday, your next meeting would be on April 11th. Does that sound right?
Yes, yep.
4th is the first one, 11th is the second?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just, at the bottom, I'm just making a note of that.
Yeah, I'm not getting it too.
Okay, designate locations for posting agendas. One of the things I'm working on is, I think, especially with how future planning may work out, just hanging the agenda on the door, I think we would really benefit from having some kind of window board or something, bulletin board
Yeah,
place
like how they have the-
outside, and then if there are things or activities that are going on or people who are trying to organize stuff,
Mhm.
they'd have a lot easier access of being able to share something like that. So I would say still the
Great idea.
school, town office, and meeting house.
How do
would
we get
be-
one of those boxes? For
I'm building one.
You are?
Yeah.
That's really good. That's
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
You say that now, wait till the debauchery comes out, but
It won't
trying
get
to
closed.
anyway. And the was thinking like up to at least 4 pieces of paper, not anything like massive, but
Yeah. and we'll do-
something that if an agenda needs to be posted or there's an activity,
Right.
it leaves space for it. So, so what are thoughts for meeting house, school, town office, as we've always done?
If we're gonna have that box outside, then I say that those 3 locations still work for me anyway. We have a hand up.
Russ or Joyce?
Go ahead, Russ.
I'd just like to comment from my experience. When you're having posting meetings agendas, generally the clerk of the legislative body maintains an email list to which they send out a copy of the agenda at least 48 hours prior to the meeting. And I think it's a prudent move because many of us do not drive up past the school or the town office every day, and that having the clerk send out to a list of individuals that want to attend the copy of the agenda would be very appropriate. And it may be maintained through Outlook or some other simple service available through email correspondence.
So the email does get sent, Russ, through the WCSU, and B has put it on the town website. So it's on the calendar there with the agenda, necessary documents. When we get that, we forward it right under her, and she's a rock star. She gets it up on the website super quick. So that's the town website as well. So that's another place that if people aren't seeing the physical locations, we have worked on that to make sure we're.
Just one minor tweak of what you said. The SU does not send it out to an email list to the town people. We don't have that information.
Just
We-
Right,
we
but the
posted-
parents.
Well, they did when the school was here, and the admin assistant would do that. I don't know if that's still
What does Stratton
happening.
do? Being that they're
Stratton
not
students are
operational.
all over the place. They're not
Yeah.
in one location, so they just post at their town hall on their website. I mean, they have 3 physical locations because that's the law, but I mean,
Right.
their website is where they do it.
Ellen sends it out usually.
Yeah, but she's
Okay.
not
No, I
responsible.
understand.
She does it.
And it is on the SU website.
Yeah.
So,
So it's posted, SU website, town website, and in, outside of physically, the meeting house, town office, and the school.
and also physically outside of our office too.
So, thank you. Michael Pelton?
Just for clarity, the select board does not maintain a list. We have been in the habit of giving that to Ellen, as the town clerk. And she has been sending it out to her list that she has. I think it's associated with the WCO, but I think that's a pretty good resource if that's something you wanted to do.
We kind of,
Thank you.
can we do that now? Send it to Ellen.
Yeah, I don't know if that's
Okay.
an official.
So do we need a motion for the 3 locations? Yes?
Yeah, you need to vote on it.
So I move to post 3 physical locations, the meeting house, town office, and school.
Second your motion.
Okay, any discussion? Okay. Pat McLean?
Yeah, just want to say the number of students that are currently in the Windham district is relatively small, and keeping in touch with those parents by email would be very simple. I'm sure you already know the email addresses of most of them, if not all of them, and I would recommend that you, in addition, make sure that the parents get notice for the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Maureen?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I think what Michael Pelton just said is not entirely accurate. At least for the select board, you do have to send out an agenda copy by email, but to anyone who requests it. And Cord does send out, he has a list of people who have requested to be on the distribution. So that does go out from Cord. I don't know if the school board has the same requirement, but I'd be surprised if they didn't.
Is it a requirement or is that?
I mean,
something
honestly, I'd be cool with it if I
Yeah.
had an email list.
Yeah.
So
Right, that's
if
what
I
someone
think the
can-
only requirement in law is the 3 physical posting locations.
I believe you're correct.
Tell you
So-
what, if someone can get me an email list, I'm down. I'll send it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I don't mind.
So hearing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. The meeting house, the town office, and the school will be the 3 physical locations. The agenda will be posted. Agree on use of Robert's Rules of Order. So with that, that's what we've been operating under.
Or Robert's rules for small boards.
Or Robert's Rules for small boards. I don't know. Oops, oh yeah, I should probably be checking these off. So are you able to share, Bob, with the difference between Robert's Rules or Robert's Rules for small boards?
I'm sure there's someone in the audience that can explain it better, but I think, first of all, small boards is under 12, I believe is the number.
Jeez.
So I think you qualify. And I think there's things that can be sped up. And I want to say, I'm not an expert on this by any stretch. There aren't any other boards that utilize that currently. I believe that there's an element that allows you to do things without seconds, like motions without seconds. But I also would not urge you to do that unless we look at
Right.
it further, because I could be talking out of my, you know what, I'd prefer you guys look that up further. But regular Robert's rules is what you've been following, even though your board is small. I think
So is that something that we have to decide on at this moment, especially since we don't have the information on Robert's Rules for small boards to make the decision?
it's entirely up to you. You don't even have to adopt Robert's rules if you don't want to.
Oh,
You guys can choose whoever you want, but
Rory's
that's what the
rules.
typical, what boards typically do.
There is benefit to the structure for sure. Because
Yeah.
then when
I'm
things
interested
are
though
not.
about the small boards.
Yes, I am interested in the
Benefit
small
differences.
boards too, because I haven't seen that. So,
And I believe like your public comment things that you adopted last couple months ago, are part of Robert's rules, so I mean, you're already basically using it, so to continue with that and then to potentially
So,
modify later once you.
yeah, for the purpose of this meeting, I guess I would motion that the board continues the use of Robert's rules until we are provided with more information about the Robert's rules for small boards and can make a decision at that time. So we could add that to the next agenda. So, can I get a second on continuing to use Robert's rules until we get information on small boards?
I second your motion.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Discuss code of ethics.
So this is a document that the VSBA, the Vermont School Board Association, provides guidance for boards. And I don't, to be honest, because this is my first reorganization, I don't know how many of the boards do this. I know I was on a board member in my hometown for 8 years, and we, every year, talked about it, signed it, agreed to it, followed it, held each other accountable, so on and so forth. But it certainly isn't required. I don't know that your previous, I have the minutes here from last year, I don't know, oops, I just lost them. Whether or not you guys did that last year or not.
Yeah, I think we did.
But here's the minutes, I don't see it on there. But we may have had a conversation, just not done a motion. These are just the minutes of motions.
So this is just a standardized code of ethics. Is this something that, did you guys get any time to really look at this? Do you want to, I mean, because if there's a code of ethics, we could not just use the sample, right? We could do whatever, we want to add something else in there.
Yeah, this is theirs.
That's, yes.
This is what they provide, yep.
Yep.
And you have a policy on board member ethics, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think this might be an extension of those themes,
Mm-hmm.
but anyways, it's entirely up to you guys.
Oh, I don't see anything ridiculous in here.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds reasonable. I'm open.
Yeah.
Okay, so want to, so would we move to agree to the code of ethics for Vermont school board members, provided by the Vermont School Board Association? Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
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 Whether you choose to sign them and keep them in your binders or whatever, that's up to you guys, but the hard part.
Today is the 19th. Aye, aye, aye. 3/19.
And you do have a hand.
Okay, Crystal, go ahead.
Is that something that you guys post in your stuff on the website, that code of ethics?
I believe this document was in the board packet, which is on the website. Yep, under documents, under the Windham, on the SU website, go to Windham, go to documents. I believe it's in this meeting's packet. You think you'll find it. It's also on the VSBA website.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So we've discussed the code of ethics. We've moved along from that. Identify communication practices. So.
Yeah, did I not put that one on yours?
Designate a newspaper.
Right, oh yeah, okay, there you go.
So,
You had the Brattleboro reformer last year?
yeah, not this year.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, what does the select board use? Is it like Label Shopper or something?
What?
Do we have any, is Michael still on the meeting? Michael Pelton?
Yeah, he's there.
I am on. I can't recall which paper we used, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, I think it's worthy of having some conversations. I can reach out to board to find out. I don't want to use was not happy with their reporting, so I'm kind of interested in finding out what else is available and making sure we're circulating the population that is going to actually be impacted by our information being shared. So
We'll move that to
we're
next
going to move
month's
that to
agenda as
next
well.
month's agenda.
I agree.
Thank you. Okay, and moved. So identify board delegate to statewide health insurance. So board development, discuss board development opportunities and attendance.
So this was, if you look at the reorg part down at the very bottom and on the next page, it talks a little bit about that, and that's completely new to me. I don't know if you have to. But you get to, through, I mean, it also depends if you're going to be employing people or not, because if you're not employing people, you're not gonna have health insurance to
Right.
cover, so maybe it's one of the things we come back to later, once you know more.
Yes. I would agree on that. That's
Okay.
another research,
Well, we would
rabbit
need
hole.
to,
By April
according to
1st.
this, it says that the delegate by April 1st.
Right, so I don't see that on your minutes from last year, so it doesn't look like you did it last year, and the Health Insurance Commission police did not come after you.
Thank God.
Who knows what that would look like? So I don't know, I don't, again, it's new to me, I don't know.
Well, it says we have the ability. It doesn't say that we're
Correct.
mandated.
Correct, that does say that.
So,
Skip that if you want.
Okay. I'm comfortable with moving that along and looking more into it, because I'd much rather know more about what we're agreeing to.
yeah.
Do have a hand in the audience.
Go ahead, Russ.
I'll mute myself. If you're thinking of using something like the Shopper, which is a weekly newspaper, it's published on Thursday, and I usually don't get it into my mailbox until either Friday or Saturday. So if your meetings are going to be on Thursdays, you'd have to get everything out a week in advance. So I would counsel you not to choose the Shopper and have your meetings on Thursdays, because that's the day they publish the paper, but it doesn't get to the people in Windham until Friday or Saturday. Thank you.
Okay, so discuss local statewide education advocacy. Did we,
And then have
no, we didn't get past we're skipping the insurance, there we go. So discuss local statewide education advocacy responsibilities and then designate the newspaper. So
Okay.
this is a little off from.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
exactly.
sorry.
That's okay.
But
We can roll with it.
Again, this is discussed, so that's not, I think like the newspaper designation is a requirement at some point,
Yep.
whereas the other pieces they're looking at are discussed. Is a little bit different.
Okay. So do this year. All right, so we're gonna move on to public comment. And we're gonna limit 3 minutes per comment, limited to topics not on the agenda, directed to the school board chair, maintain order and decorum, use Zoom timer to count down. Are either one of you the host?
Yeah, I got
You
it.
are, so you're on that.
I don't need to be host. I can just put it up there. See, in the little corner.
Oh, look at that. Okay, so do we have anyone here for public comment? Lori?
Not here for public comment, but I just think it's important if the iPhone and iPads identify themselves, or anybody
Oh,
that is not identified. Thanks.
RCTC or RCCT?
yeah, there's two, iPad 2 and iPhone. Either of you.
Hi, it was Tom and Eileen Widger.
Tom and Eileen Widger.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
And then we-
iPhone is John Gordon.
Hi, John.
Gordon. Okay, and who is RCCT?
You're muted, RCCT.
Well,
Maybe they're on dinner break.
if you guys come back.
Okay, so hearing no public comment, we'll move on to correspondence. So there's I still owe Crystal Corview a response from correspondence she had sent from last time. So some of those questions may or may not be relative, Crystal, but I do still plan on finishing that and getting that information to you just so that you have it. But I see your hand raised.
Not relevant to anything school. We had a moose in our front yard.
Just now?
We also had that
Just now?
like earlier.
Oh.
Yeah, it
I'll have to
was.
keep my eyes peeled.
Yeah, there's a moose around.
My dog was actually
You had the
weird
moose
last
too?
Yeah,
night.
the moose too.
Oh
Yeah,
my
he's pretty
goodness.
awesome.
5:30.
Oh, that's
It was this morning, like around 11.
nice.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's why there was like a police, I don't know, it was like an unidentified police vehicle.
Tracking down the moose.
Like on Burby.
Staking out the moose.
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, could be.
Something to do.
Yeah, just to make sure.
Is there
Not
any
up
other
anything.
correspondence anyone wants to bring up? And thank you for sharing the moose,
That's very
Crystal. Now I'm
exciting.
envious.
I agree. That's newsworthy.
I don't know if that is.
Oh, yes, that is Michael Pelton's correspondence.
More to me, but you guys are included in it.
So, there were questions specifically. Michael, are you still on the call? Did you want to discuss?
I am, but I think you will be talking about those issues as long as those questions can be either addressed or looked into further on down the road. I think that would be appropriate. Thanks.
So Michael sent this to the board on the 10th. So if you guys want to take a look at that, and we'll be
And I can check off the questions as we have conversation and then see what's left of those.
Perfect.
If you'd like.
that'd be
I
great.
did.
Any other correspondence? I did receive correspondence about some activity that took place, I guess, at town meeting, and not being kind and putting up for sale signs in people's cars, and kind of really not appropriate behavior. So I just want to say that I did receive that correspondence. It's not anything that this board stands for or behind. That's not okay. And then I hope with everything going forward that people can be kind. This is going to be important moving forward, that we accept our neighbors and care about our community. So sorry that happened to that individual. But moving forward, I'm going to remain hopeful. People are more respectful. Now, changes to the agenda. Principal, move her up, right?
Yeah, I
Can we
wanted
do
to
that?
request we move up Renee Merluzzi, the Townsend principal. You guys had requested her to come and share a little bit about what's happening at the Townsend School, particularly with regards to the Windham students. And obviously, she can't talk about the individual students, but she can tell you more general information and answer any questions folks might have.
Sure. Good evening. Thank you. I just want to apologize ahead of time. I don't know, after last week, my power outage, my internet has been a little funky, so it might like pause for a second, but it always comes back. So I'll try it with my video on first. Yeah, so the Windham kids, they're doing great. I'll just kind of talk about the process that we followed so far. So we had the informational board meeting, Zoom meeting, not board meeting. Then we did the meet and greet at Townsend, had a really good turnout there. And then once the kids transitioned in after Christmas break or holiday break, we met with Elizabeth, myself, and Bree Madison, who's our home to school liaison / counselor. And we talked about students and what to expect. Then after a couple weeks, them in the mix of everything, we met as a full team. So that was like behavior interventionists. Dana, who used to also be at Windham, is now at Townsend. We had classroom teachers, myself, Bree, and some of our Cub Cave paraprofessional staff. And in that meeting, we scheduled services for students based on previous information and things that we had seen for the first couple of weeks. So there's lunch bunches happening. There's one-to-one counseling, as well as like small group social skills going on. The special ed services and 504 services are going. Some of the kids have been using the Cub Cave intermittently, but we've really found that a lot of them are doing really well and don't need it. And if you don't know what our Cub Cave is, it's like our sensory de-escalation, SEL support room. We've set up a couple visits with Marco, so he's come over during recess to say hi to the kids. They love that. And, you know, just like all our families, we're doing some frequent communication with them. And I mean, I can take questions, but I think that's about all I can share exactly.
Well, thank you, Renee.
And I think you're also getting my my report, right, for the West River board
Yes.
meetings too? Okay,
Yes.
great. Yeah, so you can kind of see some all school events that we're doing and yeah, things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bridget
you.
Corby?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Renee and her team. I know we talk a lot about some of the challenges that we've had and the transition. We've expressed a lot to the board about the challenges of the transition and you know, the board allowing us to go to Townsend. The team at Townsend did a really great job welcoming our kids, and the second half of the year has been really great. So I appreciate you guys like sharing that information and just being a welcome school for us.
You're welcome. Thank you, Bridget. We hope they all stay. It's been great.
Anyone else have questions for Renee? Michael Pelton.
Yeah, I read something in the paper about a 20 student cap for next year. I was wondering if you could tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, so West River has a long-term planning committee that has been planning long-term, it seems. And we are anxiously waiting for them to make a decision. I guess, so the challenge is here, our pre-K is getting bigger and bigger every year, which is really great. However, Townsend being an old building has really small classrooms compared to some of our other elementary schools. And currently my first grade classroom is only 460 square feet. And we have 19 kindergartners moving up. So they cannot possibly fit in that space. And we don't have any extra classrooms. So it really stemmed from, we need to move a pre-K. We're not trying to get rid of it. We're trying to move it to another site. And we were in Jamaica, but now with Jamaica's challenges, it's kind of up in the air. So I think that's what they're referring to in the paper. Yeah. I mean, I think there was also some things that made it seem like Townsend didn't want to accept students. And I want to assure people that that's not the case. It's really due to physical space.
So I guess my further question is then, do you foresee a problem with our tuitioning kids having challenges getting into Townsend?
I mean, I don't think so. I don't know how that would work. Sometimes, like if you're there already, you're kind of grandfathered in. So I don't know if that's a Bob question or the enrollment is definitely something we've been talking about a lot and how to do that equitably. But without a decision, we can't plan. So we have meetings on the books, I think, or we're trying to. It's been a little frustrating. I know Bob is also frustrated by that.
Yeah, it's been a 6-year process as the West River Board kind of goes through. You know, like any other place, they're facing high taxes and trying to figure out how to save money, and whether consolidating buildings would do that or not is part of what their study committee has been doing. And so, but Renee's correct about this one classroom, which is probably half the size of this room we're sitting in. And for, I think, what do you have, 12 kids in there now, which works fine, but the 19 kids rising up to that grade level aren't sufficient. So having a pre-K room be moved to Jamaica was the solution, and then Jamaica's numbers are down, so they're trying to figure out what to do about that. So at any rate, so I think the students who are there would be welcomed back. I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. I think which pre-K site is going to have space could be a challenge, but that's unknown at this point where that's going to end up. But that's only really about pre-K.
And when is enrollment? Is it the same for all of the schools? I mean, how should families here be preparing for next year so we know timelines? Is it different?
It's a great question. So, I mean, once you're past pre-K, and I'm learning all this new myself, we met today actually talking about pre-K registration. Once you're past pre-K, it's kind of a rolling admission. And so, you know, we would keep the students who are with us currently enrolled there until they tell us they wouldn't want to be enrolled there. So they would have a space given the situation right now. If they choose to tuition somewhere else, I guess, then their space would be maybe potentially used by someone else. But for the time being, my feeling is that we would allow them to stay. They've already been there. They're, as she said, grandfathered in. They own those slots. So.
Right, but if families, for any reason, decide like they want to send their children to Floodbrook, or they want to send their children to Jamaica, or they want to,
What's the
what is
timeline
that
for that?
timeline for that, for families to be able to, I mean, everyone's been under the gun with, urgency and
Yeah.
timelines and all that stuff. Like, if we can allow as much space for families to plan, I think,
Yeah.
and being transparent on that information is going to be huge.
I mean, I would say that there isn't a procedural deadline for enrolling kids in West River. However, I would say that the sooner the better, if people know to communicate with the places, whether it's Jamaica or Townshend in this case, or even frankly any place else. I mean, I know that when we had talked earlier on with Floodbrook, like, they had some spaces that were full, some classrooms. So it's like getting in touch with the principals there and the admin assistants to enroll kids. The sooner that people have a sense of where they want to go, the better. And whether this board wants to facilitate some kind of like an open house night where we ask schools to come to the gym and have a little table, like a little fair, where parents could ask questions. We could organize that. We could invite the schools around us to come and do that. However the board wants to
That's
facilitate.
clever. I like that.
Yeah, that's what they do a lot of for secondary choice. Sometimes a lot of schools do that.
Okay. So thank you very much, Renee. I don't know if anyone has anything else for Renee, but I know it's late and you're a very busy lady. So, is there anyone with any further questions for her? All right. Well, Renee, thank you so much, and thanks for taking such good care of the kids.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. So we did some changes to agenda. We jumped down. Was there any other changes to the agenda that needed to be made? Daniel, no changes? Okay. Old business. Approved minutes from 1/18/24, 1/26/24, and 2/20/24. So moved. Can I get a second? Okay. Any discussion about any of those? I think the January ones, there was participants that got added.
Yep. Yeah, we got them all revised.
And then there was everything's revised, so, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right, those minutes are approved. Approve financials. So here we go, Lori, we'll get you up here now. That was number 28.
It was, Abby, I don't see that you, Doc Hub signed it, or Dan. So, Rory did, but it was for $3,472.93. I'm not sure. Did you review it, Abby? So it's.
My computer was being pretty wonky, so it wasn't letting me get into, seeing it. Everything was like, and my printer wasn't working, so I was trying to print it off.
I don't even see that you were on that, actually, Dan.
Dan, hasn't, I don't think he's been getting them.
I'll double check on that. It went out, if you want to check your email, March 15th at 9:44 a.m. So.
And then I have it again, 15th, and then I have a reminder sent on the 16th.
So there wasn't, I mean, we could definitely push this till next time. I think the only real, probably pressing the check to get out is the Green Valley carpet cleaning one. But other than that, there was some bill backs to Windham Central. That can wait till next time. And the other vendors these were pretty recent invoices. So if you want to wait and we can resend it and then Dan can look at it and Abby, you can sign it.
Yes, we can definitely do that.
Okay.
And then, what was I just going to ask on that? The carpets. So you brought up the carpets. I don't know if anybody's noticed that. I know we saw pictures, but they look fabulous, way better than expected. So So thank you for that getting done, because that was super needed.
Thank you for.
You're zooming out.
Yeah.
Got a good Zoom. And, yeah.
That was all Greg. He's on here too somewhere.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, Greg.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Greg. They came out really nice.
Okay, so new business, superintendent report.
Yep, so you should have gotten my March cabinet report recently, a little bit late. I think the February vacation and the short month pushed my March one somehow anyways, so it was a little late coming out. A couple of the highlights, which just to let you guys know, so at a recent SU board meeting, we did a presentation on the curriculum. No, were you?
I wasn't there. I had another
you
meeting
couldn't
at the
make
same
that
time.
one, right. And we talked about how the SU is adopting a new early literacy curriculum called EL education, which comes from expeditionary learning grounding. So it is it's a literacy program, but it's like hands-on, which is a weird combination. It comes from a nonprofit. It's based in social justice, and it's scientifically it's based on the science of reading, and the research on it has been fantastic. Jen McCusick has been working with some regional districts that have already adopted it. We have a whole rollout plan. It's a K-8 program. So any of the public schools in Windham Central that students will be going to next year would be experiencing this. I believe BRSU also uses it. Springfield uses it. Brattleboro District uses it as well. So some of the surrounding ones are also using it, and Woodstock. So yeah, so it's a really well done program which gives teachers kind of an embedded science and social studies element into the literacy. And it's the missing pieces that we talked about. I think it was more maybe Dan that we talked about when we were going through some of our earlier conversations in the fall around the things that the kids were accessing or not accessing. And this is Jen's, the culmination of her research and all of this is to present this to the SU board.
What is it called?
It's called EL, the letters EL education. It stands for expeditionary learning.
Yeah.
So anyways, if you guys want to check it out, it's pretty cool. To support the implementation of that, because it's kind of heavy lift for staff, we have added a curriculum coordinator position to the SU, which will provide coaching for teachers in our already existing AST team and principals for around implementation of this, and really kind of help push us over the top, if you will. And at that meeting, I talked a lot about how the work that Bill and Jen had done with the SU and setting us up, and financially the work that Lori did to set us up through COVID, to be able to really, this was the next logical step, is to really identify a hardcore curriculum that is going to be beneficial to all of our student learners, because without literacy, you don't access anything else. So it's really important. So yeah, so that was also the big takeaway from that last month. And we have rolled out some applications. We're still looking, obviously, for Lori's replacement for December. When she leaves, that person will take over July 1, and they'll have an overlap. We talked about that, I think, this past fall as well. And then to shore up the hiring, because hiring for teachers, as you guys know better than anybody, it's really hard right now, and administrators, same thing. So for the first time, I think, ever, Windham Central is sending a team of people, myself included, our HR person, to a job fair. UVM's hosting a educators job fair in Middlebury on Friday. I'm going up. I got some Windham Central swag to give away, and little highlighters and stuff, and sunglasses, and just trying to get some applicants to come down to this part of the state to work, because we see 1 or 2 applicants maybe for most positions, and so that's tough. Anyways, on a related note, I will report out that Marco is doing quite well. He's been filling in for this maternity leave at Leland Grade Middle School Science, and from what I understand, the kids love him, and he's
How
doing
could they
really
not?
well.
He's
Right.
amazing.
He's a sweetheart. So that's going really well for him too, and he seems really
Good.
happy. So he's planning his next phases now. What's going to come next? But yeah, he's having a good time down there. So it's been good.
Anything else, Bob?
That's all I have. I know there's going to be questions. I'm happy to kind of help out as we go down through.
I just wanted
That
to
makes
add
sense.
I forgot what the changes to the agenda, because I couldn't find that. So it may fall into this, but the keys situation, these guys got them, but I don't know, I kind of want to have a discussion about keys, Could we add that to
Facility.
Greg's, facility
Building.
thing there, and
Buildings,
just
yeah.
add keys, okay. So, which we'll get up into after some questions. Looks like Crystal, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on Marco just because I get to hang out with some of the Leland and Gray kids, and all the feedback I've gotten was they love him and they're never letting him go.
Hopefully he's teaching high school science next year.
Yeah. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no further questions for Bob. We can move along into future of school building, facility condition assessment. Greg, take it away, sir.
Oh, yes, my favorite. So the state of Vermont, the AOE, as part of the just all the different things going on between Act 72 and the lead testing and the radon testing and the PCB testing, has begun looking into the deficiency of Vermont schools and to see just what the status of our schools really are. So if you have a chance to look at the document I shared with you all, I think it's on page 18, you'll see that like they kind of highlight just like very broadly initially the facade issues, roofing issues, interiors, and then they get into more detail in it.
Greg, can I pause for 1 second? This was not in the printed materials, only in the email materials, correct?
Correct.
Because it's
And I
quite
emailed
long.
it to you all.
So we'll all stop digging.
They're rustling papers over here.
It's like a 70-something page document.
Oh, right.
All right, I'll just press through it.
So we didn't go off and print 100 copies of that today. Like I said, I think we put it on the website, and I know that I've emailed it with you all, but you just can kind of see, and honestly, like a lot of the numbers they put in there aren't what it would really take to make these repairs. Like you'll see that one of them is like an exterior door that they estimate at $600, and I think anybody knows you can't buy a steel fire rated door and have it installed for $600 in a commercial building. But either way, they're numbers. There's something for us to work with. So we've been using them just to kind of help shape our future planning. And so it looks like in year immediate needs for Windham Elementary, they had you at about almost $150,000 worth of repairs. And in the short term, an additional 77, which was the 1 to 2 year mark, and then out 3 to 5 years, an additional almost 116,801. So you're looking at over $250,000 in the next 5 years that building would need, ideally would need to start to dig into some of the deferred maintenance and trying to get the building up to newer codes that our state is trying to put our schools towards.
Thank you,
I'm
Greg.
happy to answer questions.
You guys have any
I
questions?
do. So is this assuming that the building is operating as a school?
Correct.
These requirements? Okay.
Okay.
So if it's not operating as a school, in theory, there's a little bit more time to pick away or a different way of attacking.
Or different standards, right?
I assume, yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, the reality is it's still a commercial building. If you try to use it for commercial use,
It's gonna need some help.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of the issues in a lot of our schools is we've maintained them like they were our barn and not a commercial building. No offense. I think people were doing what they could to try to keep costs down and do the best that, and be cognizant of small schools and small tight communities. But I see it in many different buildings that, repairs that it's kind of like, that helped. It helped, but didn't. So.
I don't know if you would know, Greg, but I seem to remember I was talking to Lori. Isn't there like legislation that perhaps is just being discussed or around like renovations to buildings? Am I wrong?
There is, there's potential money coming. And what we've been hearing from representatives is that it will be geared towards new buildings more so than renovating old buildings.
Okay.
Yeah, the language that they're actually using is newer and fewer.
Cool.
So money, so the percentage of
Sounds
money
very
that, and again, this is still in bill, nothing has been passed. But the concept is that they're kind of settling in is that 50% construction aid on places that are taking maybe 2 buildings, making them into 1 new building instead of putting money into older buildings. And if you're not doing that and you're renovating, it might be like a 30%. Like none of it is guaranteed.
Right.
When nobody knows where the money's coming from still, but the state's
It's in
recognizing,
Vermont.
right, but the state's recognizing that there's significant problems with the infrastructure of schools across the state.
Yeah.
Because as Greg said, people have put off, I'm sure you guys have done the same thing, put off work that needed to get done to save programming and to save staff and just keep a building open and those sorts of things. And everyone's done it for years. And so you end up with a place that's good, needs some work. So.
Chickens come home to roost in the barn.
Greg, there's like tools and stuff here. I did a lot of cleaning up before I came in. Is anything, like, do you know what that, who that could belong to or?
That like little toolkit, the toolkit there with the sockets and whatnot in it.
Yeah.
That is Windham Elementary's, to my knowledge.
Oh, okay.
It's been there as long as I've been here.
It's tucked away with more Windham Elementary stuff. So, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And then, so with this, is there more that you had to talk about before I kind of chime in, Greg?
No, not really. I mean, I love keys. Bob knows how much I love keys, so I'm happy to talk about that with you all. And whatever else your needs are, I'm happy to do the best I can to meet them.
As we transition, so I have the list that was last given to me of who had keys, and it was 1 through 14. So I'm curious, which keys are these now, so I can
They're
update
numbered.
this.
They have numbers on
What
them.
number do you have, Roy?
Number 1.
All right, okay.
There you go.
And I'm going to say number 2.
I'm number 2.
Okay.
And
Now,
those were on the side, right?
they belong to people. They belong
Gotcha.
to
Okay.
other
These are ones
folks.
that we're getting back.
So there are still, I'm not sure if keys were returned, but there's a slew of folks that I think at this point, with the school not being operational, we likely don't need to have. I mean, clearly the fire department needs to have it.
Right.
But I don't know what the board's thoughts are on this. I mean, we're responsible for this building, so since a lot of this is like Carla, Paul Wyman needs it because he's still cleaning, right? Cord, does he need a key to the school itself? I mean, I think that those are things to consider, and that at least if we can get the ball rolling on getting them all to us, and then figure out from there how we're moving forward with.
Thanks.
Okay, so, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Trying to look at the list, but
Do you guys want just to see the paper copy?
I remember the email.
I have it right here.
Hey, Russ, I'm muting you because you're giving us some feedback. Sorry. You can unmute when Abby calls on you.
I'm looking at the list right now. But so, weren't the these are new locks? Okay. So then, then Sally's.
So Sally's is here. I've got Sally's. Marco's Greg.
You have Sally's, is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay.
That's in the
Carla.
office.
Carla kept hers at the
Extras.
time because there was some phys ed equipment up here that she was thinking that she would want to bring down to use.
Do you know?
But I don't know,
if
I haven't talked to her since then, so I could follow up with her and see where she's at.
I mean, the IT director do they need to be in the building at this point? Like, this is stuff that I just feel like we're starting off minimum.
I have the IT director's key.
Okay.
Currently, we have rented it out to the water operator who did some water testing up there today.
Okay. So I would say clearly the board, Greg, you need to have your key. Paul Wyman, so pretty much if there are people who aren't have a need for it, let's collect them.
Did you get Marco's key, Greg?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's checked.
Yeah. So we would still need to get Carla's and Jen McCusick's.
Just need to check in with Carla, make sure she's got all her anything that she might want.
And some of it belongs to Windham School District, so I think she was gonna be using it because with that kid,
I lied, Bob. I lied. Matt still has his, IT still has his key. I have Jen's key. Jen's key is the one that we leased out. So we do have the curriculum director's key. Sorry.
Okay. So we still need to get Carla and IT.
She might want to use some of the gym equipment to bring down.
Well, I can
there,
find
not
out. I
like-
can find out where she stands on that because that was months ago.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I mean, at this point,
Yeah.
we've been quite a few
Maybe
months
she doesn't
in.
need to do
It's
that.
been.
I'll follow.
My concern is it's just been left out a disaster everywhere. So that's why I came down early today and I moved all the stuff so we're not staring at piles in the front door when we walk in. I thought the room needed to be opened up a little more for meetings, so I was a busy bee.
It's very nice.
Hence my super cool hair. Because I was rocking out the cleaning before I got here. So these are just kind of loose ends that I think that would be very good for us to be proactive on. So would that be something, Greg, that you could help us with in getting those keys to the board?
Do you want to identify who the board feels needs a key? Maybe that's the easier way to go.
Right. So
I'm on it.
Of course you are. So so he's on it, like you get it, and then I don't want to. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. So
I'll get those keys. Yep.
slick. Thank you so much. Okay. Russ, your hand has been up.
Unmute myself. I think it's important that you discuss what you think the future of the building might be before you commit to spending money on a building that ultimately might not be part of the school property. And I think that there are a number of issues that are pretty severe in that review that would need to be addressed fairly soon. So I think deciding the future of the building and whether you want to continue to have it as part of the assets of the school district is an important point to consider early on.
Thank you. Crystal, your hand's raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest, I know there's not a lot of money to spend or whatever, but you can get like a VIN type lock, pretty inexpensive. And then you guys won't be chasing down these hard copy keys. You can just go into a computer and delete somebody's key.
Yeah. That's handy.
Very techie of you, Crystal. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, so the condition assessment, we're definitely going to have to take some time to process that. Budget draft 1, non-operational. Oh, there's more hands. I'm sorry. Michael P.
At the risk of sounding, I don't know what I would call it, but at the risk of sounding crude, depending on the future and direction of the school building itself, it might be important to consider getting back the assets that were once part of the school, because Windham paid for them. And if you choose to do something and have activities at the school moving forward, it might be nice to have the assets back to include phys ed equipment and so forth. And I say that, I know I don't know how to say it like diplomatically, but the reality is we're paying tuition to Townshend. If they need supplies to educate the students that we're paying tuition for, then it's up to them to come up with the materials and how to obtain them. I understand and I recognize that we sort of pushed our students on them pretty rapidly, and clearly they needed to obtain supplies to make it happen. But at some point we need to recover those materials if we well, we either need to recover those materials or be reimbursed for those materials so that we can move forward with whatever the direction of the building is. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think you're in dark waters there in that like you would have to take into account for the age of what was there. What was it like? I can tell you that we took like 8 or 10 chairs out of there to help out at Townsend because it was kind of quick. However, they're 25-year-old chairs. You know, I mean, you know, where do you want to go on that, right? I mean, I know that I would guess that if you asked Lori, they would tell you that there's, you know, right, in a capital gain loss situation, right, where you write off loss over the years of something and depreciation, they might be $1.50 a chair at this point. Like, you know what I mean? And then you kind of have to know what was there. I don't know. I went up there. The only thing I took out of there, I can tell you, was the chairs, and I took some education materials that were SU purchased. And so those would be SU materials for those students. So they were taken from there and brought to Townsend to be used for those students. But I just think, you know what I mean? I don't know what else was taken, and it just.
Well, I think that's the problem that we're running into. I couldn't tell you exactly what was taken, but I can tell you that I was cleaning the building for a while for Paul when he was out sick. And when I went in, I don't know whether it was a month or two ago, honestly, whenever it was, I could see a considerable difference in the building in terms of what was there. Like there's clearly empty space where there was not before. So clearly supplies have been removed. I don't know what the appropriate manner to reobtain them is, but I think it's important for us to consider, because let's, for instance, say that the school chooses to, or the board chooses to, I don't know, allow some sort of activity, I don't know, community event or something, and all of a sudden they don't have any chairs. That's a problem, right? I understand that the chairs only worth $1.50 a piece now because they're 20 years old, but still, we need chairs, you know?
I'll bring them back tomorrow, Michael. It's not a problem.
No,
We were just trying to meet a need.
No, and I get that. And I just think it's important for the board to consider whatever their choice is their choice. But I think it's something that they need to consider.
I'll add a little bit of the materials I'm aware of as well. There's some IT materials, Chromebooks, a printer that was brought up when we couldn't get the copier to work at the beginning of the year, a second TV that was brought up at the beginning of this year, some IT stuff. I don't know about the TV, it's still here or not yet, but the rest of that stuff has been removed. All purchased through central office through the IT department. And the curriculum materials, as he mentioned, also brought back, again, purchased through SU monies, mostly grants. To my knowledge, there's not anything else been taken out, like books, materials. I mean, I know the chairs, but I'm not aware of anything else.
So the curriculum that was purchased is still here, or is that also not here?
Curriculum purchased by the SU was taken out. Curriculum, anything purchased by the district would be still here.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if that helps or not, but that's just, like, I know, like the printer, for example.
It's good to know where things are
Yeah.
and what we've got, especially between, between this building and the SU and whatever it's to account for, but.
Go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, I was just gonna basically reiterate what Bob was saying. And Michael mentioned PE type things. That is also purchased by the SU because you pay an assessment for the PE teacher. So a lot of these items were purchased and by the SU. I'm happy to look into anything if we had a better list of things that you think might have been taken and see where they were purchased from. I'm happy to do that research.
Okay, so we can go through and make that kind of a list and give that to you, Lori, and then if we need to go down any rabbit holes, you can help with that.
And don't forget, there's a lot of stuff thrown out in the summer too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Not else.
and okay, so Crystal, and then Bridget.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of reiterate what Lori said. As far as the phys ed stuff, I know Carla actually transports a lot of that stuff with her to each school. So the phys ed stuff, I don't believe belongs to Windham School.
Thank you. Bridget? Corby?
It sort of already has been stated, talking about phys ed. I was piggybacking with what Lori had pointed out. Carla actually managed her own budget and did all of her own purchasing. And at one point, her and I talked about how, like, keeping that closet clean specifically because it was her stuff that she chose to put in her school.
Thank you.
So Bob, just I'm hearing discussion about the PE equipment that. So is it hers or is it Windham Elementary Schools? Because
What I
or
heard
is it
Lori
both?
say is that
It's a
was
mix.
purchased, if it was a supply line through the SU assessment, then it was purchased by the SU.
Okay, but we don't really know what. Was
Right, and I don't know what's in there, what was supposed to be in there. I know she had asked to keep the key so that she could access something if needed.
Right.
Whether
Oh,
she took anything, I don't have a clue, but I will follow up with her to find out. And if they don't need it. I mean, Michael's point is a good one in that if you're paying tuition for a student to go to a school,
everything should be covered.
the tuition money is helping pay for the teaching staff, for the supplies, that's all part of what you're paying for. So, as you guys become a tuition-only school district, you're not gonna be buying pencils for kids as they go to different public schools.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
The expectation is the tuition money covers that. So he's right in that regard, like Townsend, it would be their obligation to provide whatever they need to provide for the kids. If West River has to pay more to do so, well, they get revenue
So-
coming in to help.
So the
offset it.
electronics that was here was not
All IT
purchased?
stuff is all purchased through IT, which is a purchase service that you guys have. Every school has, every district has with the SU. IT became a centralized thing, like special ed service. There's others, like I guess the PE was part of that.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's any
I
others.
mean, like that said, is there anything, say, other supplies in the school that could be used by other schools?
I mean, you
Like,
guys have a
is
closet full of stuff. I haven't like inventoried that to see what's in there.
Well,
Like-
depending on what ends up happening here, like there's lots of
It might be premature.
creative
Yeah, I'd
ways
say
to
not to
use.
But I'm just throwing that out there that, if there's other
If there's a need,
schools
then yes, we
that could use supplies,
Yeah.
If any of it's still relevant.
Yeah, just starting to,
Yeah. I do
get
think.
our minds wrapped around,
Yeah.
like, it would be great to help other kids
Yeah, of
in
course.
other districts.
Of course, yeah. I do think that whatever you guys end up deciding to do, and I'm not sure what your thoughts are on a timeline for that process, that decision, whether you want legal advice, whether you want, I don't know, I'm just not sure where you're thinking, if the town has thoughts, or I'm sure everybody has a thought,
Yeah,
right? I mean, I'm sure there's no shortage of ideas on what to do, but as you guys start to embrace that conceptually, and part of what Lori, I think, is gonna talk to you about with the budget draft that she's gonna share with you is how you move forward and what budget you adopt is gonna depend on what you're doing with the building. Like, if you're gonna dispose of the building prior to July 1, then that's a very different budget than if you're not. And if the plan is to dispose of sometime during next fiscal year, then you have to have some money in to pay for heat and that.
Right,
You know what I mean? So
right,
like, you just have to be thinking about I just don't know where you guys are at with that, if you've heard ideas from people or not.
Yeah.
And we can arrange to have an attorney, whether it's the one that you guys have worked with previously, or whether it's one through the VSBA or whatever, just to kind of give you ideas and talk you through that process if you want. If you want to negotiate with the town, the select board, like, you could do that. I mean, there's a lot of options available to think about and talk about. I'm happy to help facilitate that. You just tell me what you need and what you want,
Thank you.
and I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
It will impact what you do and how the budget's built and what you do with everything that's in here, particularly if you're not gonna keep the building to manage it as a board. So just throwing it out there.
So with that, we can move on to the budget draft, non-operational. Lori?
Right. So, I had sent out just before the, town meeting, a non-operational budget based on the 220 meeting that we had, and you directed me, as to putting something together. So I thought I would go through that publicly because we didn't really have a chance before the meeting to go through it publicly. So you can understand all of the pieces of that budget that was presented. Does that sound reasonable, Abby?
Yes.
Okay.
Permission to share your
So-
screen?
Yes, why don't you give me permission? Let's see.
Working on it.
All right,
Try it now.
okay. Right, let's see. Here we go. All right, so you should have the narrative in front of you at this point.
Yep.
Is that what you're seeing?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so so here were the assumptions that I made when putting this budget together. So we talked about students. We know that there were 15 students and we added 5 because a lot of times when a school becomes non-operational, there may be homeschool students that decide they would like to send their students to have tuition paid. Certainly, parents, guardians that are sending their students elsewhere might opt in for this. So we want to add some amount of students to this number. You know, we could reduce this based on, you know, if you know how many students might be taking advantage of this tuition situation, we could reduce it to 20. That might be, you know, maybe more reasonable. I just, you know, we had talked about 22. And I also want to talk about the statewide average, right? So that was a known number, right? We know what the statewide average is. I do now know what Townsend's tuition is for next year, but I don't know necessarily what Floodbrook's is or Mountain School, or, well, I'm not sure if Mountain School would apply, but, you know, so we use that statewide average. So that could be, you know, more or less, right? So it's just a budget number. And then I talked about for fiscal year 25, that long-term weighted ADM, right? So right now, your cost per student, your tax rate was all based on, let me just get to it. I think it was like 33. Well, actually, don't watch the screen for a second. I'm scrolling. Is it on here? Yeah. So it was based on 33.67 weighted students, right? We know we don't have 33 students in the building, but that was the weighted ADM. So what happens when the first year of a non-operational school, or which it can apply to both a non-operational school or an operational school, but when there are students that move in after the count, which happens the first in October, basically, you don't really get credit for those students, right? So you're really paying for more students than you're getting credit for at that point. And then, of course, it becomes part of the new count of students, regardless if you're operational or non-operational, becomes part of that 2-year rolling average that is then weighted, right? So if you did have more students come out of the woodwork, so to say, those would be counted next year in the count, and you would get half credit for them because it's a 2-year rolling average. Does everybody kind of understand that? Because that can be a little tricky, right? When you see these numbers. Is there any questions on that before we move on to bus transportation? Michael, I don't know where Abby is, but.
What's the Townsend tuition rate versus the state average rate?
I believe it's 19.2. I would have to look it up, but it's just over 19.
And the current state average is what?
18,346.
Thank you.
All right, so and then we made some assumptions around bus transportation, right? Bus transportation, you don't have to provide as an operational or non-operational. You don't have to provide bus transportation. Most all school districts do. We talked about it, keeping it as is because the students do need to get to Leland and Gray, the secondary students. So I estimated it basically as it was. The only thing that we added, I was looking into what Stratton had done for transportation. And they had at one point paid a stipend basically to transport some students, but they no longer do that. So they stopped doing that. So we did add in $5,000 just as a placeholder for transportation, basically to pay parents to meet a bus at, to go to Floodbrook or the other side. Obviously, the Townshend students would be part of the transportation that is currently happening. Any questions on bus transportation?
Sorry.
I have one.
Go ahead, Michael Pelton, and then I believe it's Russ after.
My question is, I understand that we're not necessarily required to provide transportation for a non-operational school. However, do we have obligations to provide transportation for middle school and high school students?
So correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but I mean, transportation is, whether you're operational or non-operational, it is not required. So the answer would be you are not required.
But it's already in place.
It's been the past practice for probably 50 years since the Windham joined the union, I'm guessing. So, yeah.
Russell, go ahead.
I would just like to comment on that. I think that it's prudent to include transportation for middle school and high school students down to the district, the West River District. It's appropriate. We have the bus, we have the driver. I think it's appropriate to do so until we move further on and discuss other options for the school district. And I think the $5,000 stipend for the parents does not necessarily need to be included in the budget. I think that the parents right now are providing their own transportation to other schools, and I believe several of them would probably end up going down to Townshend next year if the tuitioning program moves forward as it is currently voted and planned.
Okay, thanks, Russ. If you could stay muted, please. Thanks. It provides a lot of feedback on our end. Thank you. Okay. So, go ahead, Lori.
You want me to keep going?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the next part of the budget that we did leave in based on the conversation again in that February meeting was the building costs. So we kept the building costs in, which is actually different than probably every other. I've done the scenario of the non-operational for Windham several times over the years. And most of the time we do remove the building costs. Because it's usually the building is shuttered or it's, sold to the town for $1 to be used as a community center. That typically is the what we've seen in the state of Vermont when this happens. So just to kind of give you an idea, right? So if you shuttered the building right now, right, there could be some amount of add to your surplus for not paying for maintenance and somebody to clean and that type of thing. If the building were sold or not used, shut down in a subsequent year, we could remove about $48,000 from the non-operational budget, which in fiscal year 25 equated to about 10 cents on the tax rate. It's also important to look at that, and I mentioned this in here because it is part of your decision, right? As you're really struggling to make this decision, you have to also think about that FCA that Greg was just talking about, and what are the future costs. And I think that that's another consideration that the board should look at as they're making their decision. So that's basically the.
Lori, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
And this, I don't know, maybe the board isn't thinking this way, and I'm just out on a limb, but if the district continues to own the building, there's insurance and costs. That's part of the 48,000 that you've identified.
That is correct.
And like currently, if someone were to come on campus and get hurt on the playground or really anywhere else, that's something that there's still a liability for if they own the asset, correct?
That is correct. And that is why we see that the school district doesn't want to retain that liability, right? So whereas, the town may be able to assume that liability, it's probably a conversation with the school board and the select board, in the near future to talk about that. But you are correct. The liability is whoever owns the building.
So does that include the waiver? I mean,
Well, this is assuming probably that somebody comes
like
comes
wanders
outside
in
and brings their
and-
kid to the playground.
Which on that note, there's a sign for the playground that should be put back up that says like, play at your own risk.
Play at your own
type
risk.
thing. There's somewhere, it was somewhere in the building, so we'll locate that. But that was
outside at one point?
there, yes, or it was removed because
And they replaced the playground maybe, or?
it's a sign that I think is when it's like school's not in use, like if people
like
are.
in the summer or something?
Yes, and I don't think it was just ever put up, so.
Greg, do you know anything about that?
I mean, we should have that
Never
up.
hearing about it.
Yeah, you got a new sign. You got a new sign with your playground. Just your playground rules. You always want to have a sign up for playground rules. Maybe it maybe it never got put up. I don't know. I thought it was put up by the installers. We can make that happen.
Perfect.
Last time I saw it was in the multi-purpose room behind the bookshelf.
Oh,
Very specific.
There's a role change. That's only how I'm telling the house where to find things. It's upstairs behind the door. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Greg.
You do have a hand still.
Russ, is that your hand up again, or did you not put it down from before?
It's my hand up. I have a couple of questions for Lori that are germane to the discussion.
Go ahead.
Lori, if my information sources are correct, on the just completed, lately released 2023 audit of the school year, there's an audited surplus in the amount of general about $95,000. Is that the general range of the surplus from 2023's audit?
So it is, Russ, but I did ask for reserve funds to be put on the agenda as a separate item because I want to talk through what that all means, because that $95,000 is currently sitting in your capital reserve. So that there may need to be a vote of the electorate to move that money into a more accessible line item. So I think if we can wait to talk through that until we get to that item on the agenda, that would be great.
Yeah, the other question I have is the $6,000 for legal fees. Is it prudent if we're going to go to tuitioning to have a line item in there for legal fees for $6,000? We've never done it in the past, but realizing the executive sessions we've had in the past, maybe that's why it was included. Can that be reasonably removed?
I think it could be reduced, Russ. I think that it's probably prudent to have some amount of legal fees. There may be resident issues, that type of thing. So it definitely could be reduced at this point, but I would not remove it.
Okay. The other question is, with the surplus of $95,000, could not that legal fees be reserved out of part of that $95,000 surplus?
I mean, yes, in theory it could be. I think it would also be prudent to just have that as a standing line item every year in your budget because, at least for the first couple of years to see how it shakes out. Not necessarily the 6,000, but maybe a reduced number.
A small amount, okay. The other question I have is if we remove the $48,491 from the operational budget, we would need to have some kind of a reserve for the insurance of the building and the electricity and the propane heat until the disposition of the building is made for the school year 2025, and those reserve funds could come out of the surplus of the $95,000. Would that not be a prudent consideration?
Again, you could do that as well. I think we need a better idea of what the future is of the building, maybe short term and long term. So, but yes, in theory it could. Yep.
Okay, because what I've done, and I think I've shared it with you prior to this meeting, is I have calculated that the proposed budget that you had originally prepared for $579,344 could be reduced by $3,668 for the 2 extra students, the $6,000 for legal, $5,000 for transportation, and $48,491 for the building, and $19,400 from the outside funds for transportation grant, which would mean that the proposed budget, instead of being $579, could be $463,769. That's assuming some of these items could be handled by the excess of the audited funds from 2023. And in doing that, I think I showed you my calculations. The tax rate for the town would be $1.48 based upon the assumptions you made in this budget showing to the school year, which effectively would be $130,743 less than what the proposed budget was at the town meeting. Did you have a chance to review my numbers and validate some of them?
Unfortunately, I did not before this meeting. It's been a week, 2 weeks, so I have not. But I understand where you got those numbers from, and that's I think what we're talking about, right? These are all items that we're talking about tonight. So
thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, so I did the comparison of a non-operational versus an operational. There wasn't, with all of the items that are in there currently, there's a 3-cent difference for 1 year. Again, if there are more students that come to tuition next year, you could see a drop in your tax rate as well. So that's where we were. That's what was presented, right? I won't go through the detailed line items, but I think that the summary is probably enough for you to get an idea. So so what has to happen now is, because your budget failed, you need to rewarn a budget for a new vote. And you need to decide what it is that you would like to include in that budget and what you feel that you could take out. It's a little bit hard because you need to turn around and revote a budget, rewarn a budget fairly quickly, because we want to get this done, if possible, before June 1st, because if you don't, then after July 1st, you only receive funding from the state of 87% of fiscal year 24's budget, right? So, which at this point probably wouldn't even cover the tuition. So I think it's, important to make these decisions and to get a number out there. With that, I want to talk about the reserves, and maybe if you want me to just roll into that, if that makes sense, Abby, or the board. Is that?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. So I sent an email to the board back in, I think it was January 17th. And the title of it was Late Breaking Auditors Entry, right? So we never really got a chance to discuss this because there were so many warnings that I think that this probably would have confused a lot. It would have confused the issue even more. So it is true that you have $95,000 that is in a capital reserve fund, right? So capital reserve is for capital needs. And I think in an emergency situation, you might be able to use that money, but really you need to ask the voters to use that money or to move it, right? So in the email, I recommended that perhaps you put a warning on an article on the warning creating and asking the voters to create an operational reserve. An operational reserve fund could be used for such future expenses as tuition. You know, you could use it for building changes, emergency expenditures, or to reduce the tax rate or tax impact, right? So it's a little more flexible. I wouldn't recommend putting all 95,000 into that operational reserve because if you are going to provide transportation in the future, you do want to leave some money in your capital for the new, for getting a new bus. So, I would recommend probably moving like 55,000 into an operational reserve and leaving 45 or leaving 40 in there so that you can work towards getting a new bus at some point. I don't think, after talking with Cord, I don't think it's an imminent cost that you need to plan for. So it would be my recommendation to, as you develop your new warning for another vote for the budget, that you also include establishing an operational reserve fund, and then as one article, and then another one moving it out of capital and into this operational. And then it could be used for, that way you could reduce the number of tuition students that we estimated. And if you had students move in, there would be some amount of protection there. So that's why I wanted to talk about the reserves. So along with that, and because I think this is probably going to be Dan's next question. I'm trying to anticipate it. So we're looking, I had sent the board a profit and loss this week, I think. Basically, it's looking like $20,000 right now. Certainly it's less than what I had estimated, but there were some, expenditures that were above what I had estimated the first time around, or even the second time around in projecting out. So that would be almost just about enough to cover the deficit in the general fund, right? Because when we made this entry to move the money over to the capital, because the voters told us to in fiscal year 22, then what it did essentially, the money's all the same, but what it did is create this deficit in 23. So technically you're supposed to add that deficit to your budget. But I knew that we would probably have somewhat of a surplus in fiscal year 24. So I think you're going to come out pretty close to even. If not, it's not going to be a substantial amount, and it can roll into the next year. So that's a lot. It's a lot of moving pieces, but it would probably set you up the best way possible to weather, a couple of different things, right? To weather purchasing a new bus in the future, to weathering students moving into Windham because they now have choice for elementary, or just students that are there that are not, that are paying tuition themselves. So I think that that would be my recommendation. Do you have any questions? There's a lot to throw at you all at once.
Can I try to recap, or Dan, do you want to try to recap?
No, yeah. Good.
I was gonna say, so the decision points that we're referencing here, and this is sort of like where we're hinging on. So one of them, the starting place from your narrative is the number of students you build in for tuition. That's a decision point, right?
Yes.
You're recommending 22. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I think that, we put in like 7 extra students. So I think we could reduce that. Unless somebody either in the public or on the board has knowledge of, hey, we know, 7 more students are going to require tuition, or ask for tuition. I would reduce it to 20.
All right, so that's one decision point they have to make, reducing that to 20. And then the bus transportation piece, what's included, what's not? Is there the Townshend run, so to speak, the stipend run, the other direction, so to speak? Those 2 factors, what's the decision point on those? And I guess by extension for the Townshend run, continuing transportation for secondary students as part of that decision, right?
Right.
And then the third decision point is the building, and what you're putting into budget depends on what you're going to do with the building and when you're going to do it. So far, so good?
So far, so good until we get to a warning. But yes, that is the budgetary points.
Right. And then for the articles that you talked about, establishing an operational reserve and moving some amount of money from the existing capital reserve to the operational reserve.
That is correct.
Did I miss anything? Was that the highlights?
Those were the highlights. That's a lot of decision making, to be honest.
I was just saying, to that point, the timeline for said decision making to have a budget passed prior to June 1st, so we don't roll into the 87% of a failed budget on July 1, knowing that there's warning deadlines and stuff to do that, and there's the potential for maybe another failed vote or a close one with a recount, or all those machinations that can happen, right? The sooner the better is what I'm hearing you say as well.
100%.
Okay.
Understood. So the operational reserve, wouldn't that cause a deficit for the FY26 in a similar fashion?
No, because this is money that's not in your general fund, right? It's
Okay.
not part of your.
So it's separated
It's not
out.
part of your tax basis fund.
Okay. It's separated.
It was. It was at one point in time, but then it was moved over based on what the voters said to do.
Okay. And then
bucket.
And then, I guess I'm having trouble with the 22 students tuition. I mean, it's hard to know, what that's going to be, right? And usually, I mean, when we put together the non-operational budget, we definitely want it to be the most conservative, right? Just in case. But I guess, I would like to, I don't think there's any way we're gonna know, right? And when we want to stick to numbers, typically that, gives us a room, to
wiggle room.
to actualize if, that did happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with leaving it at 22 either. If that's the board's desire and they would rather, have few extra cents on the tax rate to protect themselves from students moving in, there's, that is up to the board
Or
to do.
Or I guess students moving in or students opting in, right? That are already
Exactly,
existing.
either
here.
one, right.
Okay.
That's correct.
Because there's a large number of students.
Would it
like
be
that in our district?
worthy to consider hiring a person to be at the building that as far as the building goes down the road? Would that affect our budget? I would imagine so.
We'd have to cost it out.
And but it might be worth considering to have some kind of building manager that is able to allow for access to the building, so they can work with whoever's gonna be contracting stuff to get repairs done. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of work building wise, but there's also been a lot of requests and ideas for use. So while we're going through the budget, it's something maybe worthy of considering of what it would look like to employ someone to manage that, so that we're at least being able to benefit and get benefit out of the building while we're dotting dots.
Originally, with the building use, we didn't have to hire somebody to.
No, but this would be consistent instead of it being on the board, right? To say, if any use of the building, one of us is gonna have to be there. Hire somebody that can set hours and work on being able to be available for families that wanna use it. If there's a sip and paint that wants to get done to make money, or a craft thing, or things that can be done here, somebody needs to be able to manage that, and I feel like we will get in way over our heads if we think as a board we're gonna be the ones doing that. So it's just something to throw out there to think about.
What would that look like, Lori? Or is there past precedent?
So first, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Is there
Apologize.
past precedent for that? Like positions to run the building? And this is a great question too. I'm glad you're still there.
Yeah, I mean, so this is assuming that you have decided or are making the decision to actually keep the building, right, as the school district, and to not engage in conversation with the town, right? So, I mean, the same thing could happen, right, if the town owned it and the school district did not own it, right? So then you're transferred that liability. So I think that's the piece that, Abby, it sounds like you've made your decision on whose ownership it is of, it's when you're describing a manager that the school district would employ. So I guess my question to you would be, is there a manager that manages other properties that the town owns?
But this doesn't need to be somebody that's sitting. This doesn't need to be somebody that's sitting at the building.
They could have hours here, so then people would know if I want to use the building, there's somebody available that's going to be at the building, so they could go to the building.
Or when you have your nice new board, maybe there's information within that stays always for people to contact, or however it works, who to communicate with for things, instead of paying to employ somebody to sit here.
Well, I don't think it would also be necessarily to employ just to sit here, but there could be incentives for them in part of how we do hiring to create the community things. They get a percentage off of profits. So
I think that's a lot.
That's if they wanted to do a knitting thing or a food canning or whatever the case may be within the community. I just think it's a lot to ask on the board to have one of us be here, or the ability to always be able to designate somebody to be able to be here for the event.
One other thing to consider with regards to that, and as Lori's suggesting, if the board did decide to sell to the town, if the town was agreeable to purchase it and take ownership of it and all that kind of stuff, the town could organize that. The expense for that, including the $48,000 plus whatever repairs may need to get done, plus this person's salary and whatever that go along with it, would come from the town budget, which doesn't run through the same mechanizations that a school budget does. And it might actually be cheaper for your town to do it through the town versus doing it through a school district.
Do we have any information on that?
Yeah.
And that's why I think as we're moving forward and learning about kind of this change and transition, the more that resources we're creating for ourselves, essentially. That's why I was thinking to have somebody here, it's like the reference point to go, people have reached out, they want to do a nature hike and they want to go do that. Are you available to be there that day to set this up and make sure the waivers are collected and the forms are all available?
I see where you're going, and I think it does. I would feel more comfortable if we did speak to the public more about it.
Yeah.
Because I could see it down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, down the
And-
road. I think
And it
it's
doesn't mean that we
now.
can't do something, past approving this budget. But we don't have numbers around it, right, what that
Yeah.
structure looks like, and we're,
I mean, it might be worth,
we're at a lot of decision points, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Adding another one, it seems a bit daunting. But it doesn't mean we
it
can't
might be worth
do it later.
inviting the select board to a meeting, or inviting yourself to a select board meeting we put on the agenda to have sort of a joint board conversation where the whole community
Yeah.
can come out and just talk it through. There may be, I mean, there's
I
definitely,
think we'll have to have that.
Yeah,
There's definitely gonna be
I mean, I
more
definitely
about this,
envision. I mean, I definitely envision.
It's gonna have to be a joint.
a very wide open net in terms of community involvement and talking
Yep.
over this, because I don't think there's any way we're going to get down to what we want to do with the building by the time we have to approve this non-operational budget. Like, I don't think there's any way.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of discussion to be had, and I want as many people as possible. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it would make a terrific community center, right? That's really what you're sort of describing, Abby, as I hear you talking. It really would make, would be a fabulous thing for your community. But to Bob's point, he's absolutely right. The funding mechanism is much different in a town versus a school district, right? Because the school district, you're part of the whole state of Vermont, right? Where the town is just charging their assessment based on their expenses. So I think that would be a question to your select board as to, okay, if you took on the $48,000 and then, maybe there's a community center coordinator, right? I mean, that's kind of what you're describing. What would that look like on the tax rate of the town?
Sure.
Versus, I just told you that it would be 10 cents. Wow, I was drawing something on my paper here. Highlighting. I told you it would be, 10 cents less on the tax rate to take that $48,000 out, right? So I can tell you that information, but I can't tell you what it would cost on your town side for taxes. So that would come from your select board, and whether they had an interest in doing that.
Kathy Edgerly has her hand up.
I would like to see numbers around that if I know Michael's on, but if it were possible to price out like what that tax difference would look like, efficiencies, right? Like, I think that would be helpful.
You have a hand in the room first.
Kathy Edgerly?
Well, last night, the select board approved to MTAP, which is Municipal Technical Assistance Program, to do a community needs assessment. And I don't think Lori understands what we have in town, what we don't have in town. We don't even have someone to program our meeting house. And I would hate, I will draw this line to see this building being in competition with the meeting house. I think that
Which
would
is already
be
underutilized.
a terrible mistake. I mean, I think it would be better to say, let's look at our needs assessment. Do we need a daycare center? Do we need a early education center? Do we need I don't know, but to Daniel's point, let's talk about it and plan about it before we start deciding how much money should be here and there. We don't even have a person. If the town wanted to take it over, who would take it? We don't have that. We don't have a community center manager. We don't have a programming person.
I mean,
We
the
don't have a
library is
planning
open
person.
from 3 to 5 on the
Are we a
2-hour window
if you read our
check out
town,
books.
if you read our town plan, it says the town of Windham is absolutely committed to having a library. Well, we don't have a library by the state law. Doesn't mean we couldn't have a library. Doesn't mean anything. But I would say that until we decide and we maybe, but again, June is right in your
Yeah.
face. I mean, I would say that one of the things we need to do is back out and engineer this in reverse. If it has to be decided by what time, what's the day when that has to be warned? What's the day? And then get all the way back to where we are now, because I think that would be a disaster, wouldn't it? If that wasn't done. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you've got to run almost 3 parallel tracks.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. The needs assessment was really helpful.
So, yeah, I mean, so you can propose a budget that has the operation cost just built into it, bring that to the voters, postpone the decision until you have more information, and see what happens. I mean, that's absolutely can do that.
I mean,
Thank you, Kathy.
And I see Michael's hand up, just to kind of hit it before, you call on him. I think I heard the suggestion, was it you, Bob, of having a joint meeting or something with the select board, because it's starting to sound like, we need to be lockstep with
we
the
can't
select board in
silo
order to
this.
understand this. And I do want to comment on a couple of other things like stipends for bus transportation. Personally, I'd like to see that stay in, a couple cents off the budget, to shortchange parents like that. I mean, I just don't see it. It's unconscionable. I'd like to keep it in. And I'd hope the public would too, even if they're not a parent, even if they don't have a kid.
Yes.
It makes it more equitable.
Absolutely. So my vote would be to keep the stipend in.
Yes.
I would agree with that.
Okay, that's you got a decision.
Well, Rory hasn't decided, but
what I've heard, and I have some hands up, what I've heard you kind of say is stay with the 22s is more conservative, keep the transportation stuff in, because you want to be equitable.
Yeah.
And maybe keep the operational stuff in until the town and the school district have time to kind of figure it out.
I mean, I would like to hear the argument of the parents that don't deserve it, that the public deserves a couple cents off of the budget, and the parents that would get this stipend do not deserve that money. I would love to hear that argument.
No, I wouldn't.
Well,
Greg, is that your hand up? I have a wicked glare on the screen.
Yes, Greg.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think the idea of you guys having a building manager and a community center, and I could be completely wrong here, but it feels like you're a school board whose goal is not to run a community center. You know what I mean? Like, I think it feels like it would be the decision of your town if they wanted to try to purchase it to make it something else. I think for you guys, you're either deciding whether you're keeping the building and going to pay it to be empty, or whether you're going to try to sell it, because I don't know, I can't help but think it seems kind of weird that we would have a school board operating a community center. You know what I mean? I don't know, just seems odd to me.
So it wouldn't be a community center that keeps coming up. I think it is in ways to utilize the building during this time would be a more appropriate way to look at it. It's not necessarily, the long-term plan of what this building could be, but while we are making all of this dive into information and figuring out what's going on, that it's reasonable, since we've passed the policy to allow the building use, to come up with ways to at least use the building while we're still working this out, so it's not sitting as an empty building. So that was my thought, was not like turn it into that as a board, but how are we as a board who are responsible for this building giving the community access? And I think that that's fair and reasonable.
well, I could see
If you guys, sorry, Dan, if you
No, go
guys
ahead.
in the future too, if you'll just give me like a day's notice too, it's not a problem to make sure I have the heat on and running and whatnot too. So if you're saying, hey, by the way, we did have someone reserve the building for Tuesday from 9 to 11, we can set that up.
I also live two houses.
Which is kind of why I was thinking if there was somebody we had hired to be able to manage those types of things, it would be yet another person that would be able to say, hey, I need to reach out to Greg. There's this activity going on. Make sure the heat and stuff is good. That's kind of where that was coming from. Not full-time, this is forever, but just an actual person that could help facilitate the continued use of the building. So that's just kind of where my 2 cents was.
I mean,
Mike?
I could see that in the future.
Yeah,
I honestly, I doubt it by, approving this budget, but it doesn't mean we can't dip into, operate that's exactly what Lori is talking about in terms of having the flexibility to spend right out of the operational fund.
And for things like that, I'm happy to. I work from home. I live, everybody probably knows where I live. Just a couple houses down. I'm happy to help out and open the door or turn the heat on or make sure things are in order from
right on. Michael Pelton, unless Greg, your hand's still up. Did you have more, Greg?
No, sorry, I got you.
No, you're good. You're good. Michael Pelton, and then Crystal Corview.
I would like to encourage the board to look at ways of making the building more accessible, whether that's putting information on the website so people know who to contact and what potential uses are. I don't know if there are capacity issues that need to be considered, but it might be something to think about. And also, I want to echo what Kathy was saying. We don't really want to put ourselves in a situation where we're competing with the meeting house.
Right.
So I don't know how that looks in terms of the short-term planning. The long-term planning, I really think that the community at large needs to really consider what we want to do with the building in general. I don't know. I suppose we could move fast, but I really don't think that it's a wise decision for us to move too fast in terms of like the school board selling the building or not selling the building and such. But in that sort of light, I think it's important for us to think about some of the information that we're going to need for that kind of future planning, to include things like what is the actual value, like the market value of the building, what kind of constraints we may or may not have in terms of selling it. For instance, are there any things that need to be done before we could sell it? For instance, does the floor need to be rectified, or is that okay in its current condition? Also, there's been a lot of conversation back and forth about whether we can sell the building for $1 to the town. And I've heard arguments for and against that it's not possible or it is possible. I've also heard conversations about, well, it could also be sold to some sort of educational entity for less than market value, but it still would have to be something close to market value. So my question for that would be, what are the constraints? What constitutes an educational organization, so forth and so on, because those are going to be some of the considerations that the board's going to have to think about. There may not be an appetite to sell the building to the town, or there may be, I don't know. But ultimately it may be more beneficial not to, I don't know. The other issue at large is the maintenance, the deferred maintenance that we have. I don't remember the exact number, but let's call it $180,000 or whatever it was, right? If for instance, the school board were to sell it to the town, and now the town has $180,000 to rectify in some period of time, how is that going to look for us as the town? Is there some way that the school board could rectify some of those issues before they sold it to us with, for instance, the reserve or something like that? Because right now, and the reason I bring it up is right now we're looking at the meeting house. The meeting house has a fairly large amount of things that need to be dealt with. And it's the numbers are
well, they're kind of daunting sometimes. So we were able to, thank you, Kathy, find some grants to help us with that, but it doesn't necessarily take care of everything that needs to be done. So we have a fairly large amount of maintenance that needs to occur already. We've got to build a town shed and so on and so forth. So I guess my question is how we can reduce those potential issues that the town has to deal with in the future.
Thank you, Michael. Crystal Corvier?
So I just want to point out that you guys just don't have time to sit on these decisions. You have to approve a budget. You have to get a vote on that budget. To Michael's point, yes, the school district is allowed to close the school, sell it to the town for $1. There was a vote in 2018. You can get the information from the town office. To people's point about a daycare center, we just listened to Greg Frost say $250,000 worth of work needs to be done. So I think it's really just unrealistic to be thinking about, can we create a daycare center? Well, not unless you're going to put $250,000 into it, which the taxpayers are they just failed your budget. So they're obviously not going to approve $250,000 for a daycare center.
Well, we're not really at that place yet, Crystal. We are definitely hearing lots of feedback from folks regarding what their ideas and what things should be done. But as you mentioned, the budget and understanding which steps we must take going forward are pretty crucial right now. So I know the board will be scheduling at some point with the attorney to kind of compile some ideas for questions to get some legal advice so we can have some straightforward conversation with Mr. Ottinger on that. So that's in the pipeline as well. But we will be doing our due diligence and making sure we know what is needed. We can work and collaborate with the community and the assessment that's going on to see if that information weighs into future planning for this building and what that all looks like. But we're not there yet. So just to keep that in mind, nuts and bolts we got to get through is the budget.
And also correct me.
I just want to say to Dan, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness behind the transportation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Really important.
Always going to be an advocate for parents. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but it was not $250,000. I think I heard up to 150.
Immediate 150, 3 to 5 years total, 343.
Okay, so over a longer
Sounds like
lifespan.
the
Five years.
Yeah.
Over the
Okay.
next 5 years.
Yeah. Okay. So.
All right.
So we're not immediately facing $250,000. So I just want to make sure that the public recognizes that before we start saying $250,000 10 more times.
Okay. I'm going to take Pat McLean's hand and then we're going to move along because it's getting late and I haven't eaten dinner and my stomach's going to take over the show here with the gurgling. So save everybody from that if I can. Go ahead, Pat.
Thanks. I just want to say I think it's really important that we remember the first priority is the students and their families and what they need to be successful in school. So I think the town does need to have a much bigger conversation about possible use of the school. But, it's really important that the families hear what are going to be the procedures for determining where their child will go for school, having a fair where they can meet people from the different schools and see what might be available is a great idea, but there are some very immediate needs and time is ticking. So I think it's really important that you all think about what to put in place for the students and their families to make sure they'll be successful in the next year. And I think it sounds overwhelming I'm sure, all these decisions, but time is money. And if you go slow, you're going to be paying more for maintenance and additional costs, and really should think about the first priority being the kids.
Well, thank you, Pat. Kids are well taken care of. They're in a good spot. That's where everybody's at. That is no longer an issue. And it sounds like that they're in good hands. So,
yeah, and I have a couple thoughts to that. I mean, yes, we can't wait 5 years, but time is ticking. In terms of getting it by April, by June, by next year. I mean, we haven't even heard from the town yet. All of this is premature.
Yeah, I agree.
There's way too much and way too many people outside of this call to talk to. And so I will not be pressured by time is ticking. And you can say at the next 5 meetings, but we need to talk to everyone about this and bring everyone together. Like we just came from a polarizing vote after 2 other polarizing votes. Like it's time that we try to bring things together.
thank you, Dan. Yeah. Thank you, Pat. Okay, residency policy. Can we move along to that? Okay. Pretty, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, I do want to talk about one more thing for the budget.
Oh, Lori.
Lori needs instructions on what to do next.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So Dan, I don't know if you had another question, but I think we, because I know we don't want to be pressured about the building, and I completely understand that and respect that, but we are under pressure to rewarn a budget and potentially move this surplus. So I do think that we you need to give me some direction and probably have a special meeting in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, my thoughts are towards transportation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless we want to sell the bus and offer all stipends, then I like it the way it is.
Well, has anybody checked in with Cord?
I mean, it's a good question. Well,
because that might be a reasonable thing as far as if we're looking at transportation, our one bus driver, if we do receive,
if people are going to Floodbrook to well, I don't know about Jamaica, but Wardsboro.
Transportation to all those places, right? We're only offering the main bus route.
And then we would offer stipends to the others.
Possibly, right? I mean, Stratton doesn't even do that anymore.
And
so
I know that
what we were modeling.
They were hiring for a part-time bus driver. I'm assuming that hasn't gone through with anything, or is somebody?
A lot of questions coming out here right now. So let me just. So the bus thing the transportation piece is a 2-parter. You have currently in the budget Lori has created. You have the current bus and a current employee to drive said bus on a Townshend run for your elementary, whichever elementary students choose to go that direction, and your secondary students which have to go that direction. Mm-hmm. Additionally, you have a $5,000 placeholder for stipends for parents who would go the other direction to connect with a bus stop somewhere in the Floodbrook corridor. That's what's in it. Depending on where you guys go longer term, providing transportation doesn't mean you have to own a bus and employ a driver. You can contract with somebody else. You can do it in a stipend method. Like, there's different ways you could do that. I think the question right now is like, what do you want to have in this budget? Lori needs direction so we can come back to you with a draft for you to adopt and therefore warn to put back to the voters. And if the sort of the as-is plan is what she put in there, it included the stipend piece, but as Rory pointed out, that Stratton doesn't do that anymore either. But they do pay, correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, they do pay for some busing, right?
They pay BRSU to they pay $25,000 as a contract. Right.
Do some busing for them in that direction, for kids that go in that direction.
Just one direction, right?
One direction. So, yes, but that means you could go on different routes. You could put out to bid a bus contract. You could sell the bus and have someone else. There's lots of different things you could do.
I mean, we can also do that after passing.
Correct. So having a dollar amount in there to have a budget passed does not tie you to that method of transportation. It ties you to the bottom line of the budget.
Because we're still going to go through P&L and we can make changes as we go along throughout the year, right? And talk about this and not be under the gun, and start selling buses and,
my feeling is that if you're communicating a budget to families around this is what the budget includes, you would probably at least want to continue it for that year so that people are making decisions based on that
Exactly.
thing. But then you could say sometime next year, hey, for fiscal year 26, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z instead.
We don't even know who's sending their kids
You get no
outside.
idea where people are going at this point, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's fair, but so I guess I want to go back to Lori's questions. What do you want in the budget? Right, what I heard you guys say is that you want to stick it with the 22 kids, you want to stay with the transportation as she has built it, and you want to keep the budget operational piece in there.
So what does that change?
Well, it changes nothing from this draft, correct, Lori?
But this is the non-operational, so it's a little bit less than the approved.
Oh, it's less than the
Original
one that got
approved.
defeated, for sure, yes.
Yeah. By, by 3 cents, I think.
I like how it's presented.
Yeah.
The total was 579,344. So if you don't want to make any changes, then that's what I would present back to you when you just, are ready to approve it and move forward with the warning.
Yeah, and I'll further say that there's no way, given the lawsuits and just litigation, at the district, at the town at one point, there's no way I'm going to cut from the lawyers, like from our
budgeted.
our budgeted piece that already exists.
Based on one of those suggestions.
Yeah, I mean,
Right,
I
but it's
mean,
not advised.
maybe if we see a couple years of nothing.
So it
but no
sounds like we're
activity.
talking about Lori, you said the word special meeting because you're talking about making this quicker because you have to warn this in the 30 to 45 day window in front of the vote,
I think
right?
we should probably ask legal about that. I think you can do a revote quicker
Okay, all right,
than 30 days. So.
okay. But holding
But
a
the town still needs time.
But we need a special meeting to adopt a budget as a board and to potentially talk about these other articles that you've suggested.
Yes.
All right. Do you want to put that on the end to come back to adding a meeting as a later discussion? Or do you want to do it now with Lori's here because
Yeah,
her
that's what Lori's
timeline
here.
is going to be important as well? I mean, she doesn't sound like she's changing the draft budget that she's given you. So there's not a lot of legwork for her on her end, I don't think, Lori. Am I misrepresenting?
No, that sounds like you have it exactly right.
So, yeah, what do you want to look at calendars and pick a date now and we can figure that out?
Well, I guess let's start with you, Lori, because
Yeah, I'm off the week Monday, April 1st through the 5th. So the next week.
Well, next week is their normal meeting week. The 11th was their new meeting week.
Oh, all right. So we could go ahead and just do it then. I forgot you moved it up. Right?
There it goes.
To the second.
Yeah, you went from the 3rd to the 2nd, so actually
I
you've
hate that so much.
really looking at like a 3-week gap instead of a month away.
Yeah.
So maybe you just do it on the 11th.
I think that sounds
Yeah,
reasonable.
might as well.
Okay. Now, Lori also mentioned the legal advice around rewarning a failed vote. Am I getting that from the SU's attorney or are you getting that from Mark?
I thought I saw that somewhere, but-
We've got to compile questions for him. I don't know if that is, I mean,
I feel like that one could be appropriate for Sean
Yeah.
or whomever.
Yeah.
Right. To
Just want to make
look
sure
at.
there's no, the toes aren't being stepped on.
No,
Yeah,
I,
no,
I,
it's-
I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Ask Sean, revote timeline. I can also have him help craft the two language for the two articles that Lori
Yeah.
has suggested. It's good to have that run through legal as well.
Yep.
And I can bring that to you guys on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
perfect.
Good?
Yeah.
Lori, you're good on that end?
I'm great. That's a lot of progress. Thank you.
Go team.
All right.
Okay.
So we're all set with Lori then, or, well, the residency thing, do you want to stick around for that just because you have some working knowledge of that, or do you want to go eat dinner too?
I don't have a lot of knowledge around
All right.
residency, really.
All right, I'll take care of that because I've had some experience this fall with them, so.
All right, so Greg and I can do the skedaddle.
Were there any other building questions that you wanted Greg for? And we didn't get to all Michael's stuff.
Yeah,
in the
Yeah,
correspondence.
Michael's
You have one for
email.
Greg.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, sorry, Greg. We're almost gone.
Greg, have you turned the heat down yet?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And then
Why,
it's
is it still hot?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's gonna take a little bit, but
It's Bob's fault. It's all Bob's fault.
oh,
You go out into the lobby area and it's about 20 degrees cooler out there. It's nice.
Yeah, okay.
And
Thanks,
if-
thanks.
As things, Greg, just to save you time, because we are uncertain with all the information we're going to learn as far as our role with this building. But any information that you have that we may end up inheriting or anything that, you know, kind of want to collect to send our way, would be helpful. So just to kind of throw that out there instead of us coming to you every time we learn something new, might just be handy to be prepared. So, and that's all I've got, so.
Yeah, and a lot of these maybe were more appropriate for your attorney.
Yes.
Some of them were like easier, but I mean, some of them would be more appropriate for the attorney too, so.
Yep.
All right, so it sounds like we're done with Lori and Greg then.
Yes, thank you two very much.
Try to
Thank
get-
you.
Have a lovely evening.
Bye.
And
Okay.
I will start the database information for you all and start sharing it out with you. Maybe even creating I'll share a drive folder with you.
Okay.
Awesome, and that would go for the IT, like security, all that kind of stuff. So I know it's not typical, but you're the best. Thank you so much, Greg. Yep.
Have a good evening.
You too. Residency policy.
Yeah, so we put that on here just because in school districts that pay tuition instead of operating, sometimes you get people who claim they live in town to get access to tuition money. It's more prevalent in places that are providing tuition to private schools, particularly secondary. So Stratton has a very rigorous procedure, which I want to just walk you through so you understood where it was. It might not be necessary right now.
It seemed how you're explaining, where it's geared towards people who might be trying to escape the system.
Manipulate the
a little bit.
system, and maybe you don't need that, maybe you don't need it because you're not offering secondary, whatever. But I mean, it's just good to understand it, so you guys have a background. What they do is they have no employees in Stratton minus this one part-time person who is their residency fact checker, and they have like a 15-page affidavit that you have to fill out to claim residency because they have all the condos and everything else they got to worry about. Once that person reviews the materials and all the attached files that you have to submit, they make a recommendation to me. Statutorily, I have to make the determination, but I'm following their recommendation. And then alert the family to the decision, and if they are found to not be legal residents, then they can appeal to the board. And if they lose that appeal, they can appeal to the Secretary of Education. So that's sort of the process. I don't know that you guys need anything that extravagant right now, but it might be good to like start to think about that from the policy development stage of where you want to have, even like River Valleys, which offers choice 7 through 12, has a residency policy with not as thorough as Stratton's, but some other types of things they have to do because they're, again, sending money to private schools. Some of them are overseas and all sorts of like crazy stuff. So I just wanted you to kind of have it on the radar, and if you wanted to instruct me to come at you with a draft in the future, I can. I just wanted you to be aware that once you move to tuitioning, it's a thing,
Right.
just to be aware of.
What does the SU have in place for this currently? Since I imagine.
Right, well, River Valleys has something, they're in the SU, Dover, Wardsville.
So
They have something in place for their secondary. Marlboro, I don't know if they do for their secondary, but they also tuition secondary as well. But yeah, usually you have some kind of a policy or procedure that you follow to ensure that the people are actually residents. Because in a school, when you enroll a kid at school, you have to demonstrate you're a resident in order to be enrolled. So it's just, since there's no one here to do that, because the school's not running, you basically have this other person kind of do that work.
But I imagine you even would do that at Leland and Gray, for example, or
Oh
something
yeah,
like
we
that,
would
right?
check.
So,
Yeah, if someone gives us an address, we check, make sure it's a
Yeah.
legit address.
Right.
We've got people trying to lie about residency before it happens. So anyways, it's just something that, it's a protection for you guys down the stretch. If you're outlaying, if we're putting in 22 and all of a sudden you get 28, it's like, whoa,
yeah.
were these people, are they legal? So anyways, just something to think about.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but previous boards have faced not tuitioning, but something like this before, where they had to pull out. I mean, we have a former board member here that they had to pull out a lot of loans because of a residency that actually pertained to a child in Brattleboro.
I don't know anything about what you're talking about, but I do know that,
like, not to dig up old history, but there has been like
Challenges.
cases like major challenges.
and normally when
like
you're
this
operating a
before.
school, you have a registrar or an admin assistant who kind of does that work. The filtering process where the principal kind of weighs in to kind of be like, well, something doesn't look
Yeah.
right. Whereas you don't have that, and you don't have staff, like the SU can collect stuff and help be the facilitator of that, but do you have a policy that dictates what your expectation is to determine residency? That's all. So,
Honestly, I'd like to see it.
yeah, even if we start with kind of
At least a draft.
Yeah.
low hanging fruit one to see what it looks like, I can bring something to you guys next time as
Okay.
well.
Perfect.
And you can send it away, you can tweak it and.
Do we have to motion to direct you or?
No, you guys sounds like you guys are wanting me to do that, so I will.
Yes, Bob, please draft up
Draft
a
a policy. And I'll see what the
policy for us to
VSBA
take a
has
look at.
as well. for
Yeah, they may have a
recommendations.
good resource.
It's not a required one, obviously, so.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That was all that was.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Oh my goodness.
Second your motion.
Second.
Oh, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye, aye, aye.
Aye.
Okay, it is, what time?
8:44.
8:44 PM, 2044 on March 19th. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate your support and attendance. Have a lovely rest of your night. See you on
Watch for the moose.
April 11th.
That's right.